Oh, hello, everybody. We're back.
I am here. Can you hear me, Henry?
Oh, yes. Well, you know what? I just did a 2-minute introduction to you, and then so I was muted.
Oh,
So we'll start. We'll start again.
you know what? That's the best introduction I've had, by the way.
Well, you told me I couldn't see a few words only. So here we go.
Um,
I
I,
just wanted. Let me give you an introduction first, and introduction to everybody on the weekend. So Wayne, we've got about 21 people here on the call from
okay.
different levels of the organization. There's PSO presidents, there's PSO EDs, coaches, officials, a variety of people, and so that's the people that are on, and then we have a number of our NSO staff. I also wanted to talk briefly just to the 20, or I guess no, close to 30 people that are on this call regarding this weekend information session. And the next hour, and hopefully we'll keep it to an hour, we'll have 4 sessions, each around 15 minutes long. Wayne is the first one with the update in respect and sport, and then, as you saw on the agenda, an introduction to a new service that they're providing for us. The second one is a background on the responsible coaching movement. Shelley Coolidge from the Responsible Coaching Movement will be providing that information to us. A policy update from Ruth Belcher, who's been leading our policy working group, and then some quick updates on our strategic plan with Julie Healy from our Chief Sport Officer giving a talk. So I just wanted to mention quickly a couple of things about Wayne and his group. Since we've partnered with the Respect and Sport group a year and a half ago, and that group is fairly an awesome group. The main people we're dealing with are Sheldon Kennedy, who we've heard about, Wayne McNeil, who's a co-founder of the group, and then Roland Vidal, who's been our project manager, and he's worked with our organization for a year and a half. And in particular, I've always felt that they're like the team behind the team. They've done an amazing job in terms of supporting the board and the team and providing essential training for nearly 100 people at the NSO level, athletes, coaches, the board, the staff. And I think you've made a big difference, Wayne, in terms of our culture, our knowing what is responsible behavior, and we really appreciate everything you've done for us. So thank you, Wayne, for that. And with that introduction, I guess take it away on the new stuff you're doing for us.
Great. Well, thanks, Henry. Hello, everybody. I've got a very limited amount of time, and I've only got 3 slides. I think they'll be very quick to run through. These ones, the one in front of you right now, I don't need to go through them. They speak for themselves. This is where we're at in terms of certification. As Henry mentioned, we've got Roland Vidal, who's the project manager, and if those on the line who have worked with him, I hope you're finding that he's very diligent and he's a follow-up kind of guy. And I know that he's doing his best to try and get as much uptake for the program certification as we possibly can. I'm in Alberta, so if I ever need to meet with the folks from Alberta, I'm happy to do so. I know Henry's here too, and having a coffee, or if you need some assistance kind of getting things going, I'd be happy to help. We've also got Mark Allen in Ontario, so if you need face-to-face, we're willing to do that at your convenience as well. If you look down at Manitoba and Saskatchewan, those numbers are pretty high, and the reason that is those are historic. In those 2 provinces, Manitoba and Saskatchewan, the Respect and Sport Activity Leader program is mandatory for every coach, every sport in those 2 provinces. So obviously, it's been in use, obviously, in Manitoba from 2006 and in Saskatchewan since 2013. So we've put a lot more Synchro coaches through just by virtue of the fact that we've been there a lot longer, and you've obviously got turnover like every other sport. So that's where we're at. If there's any questions, please let me know, or I'll just move on to the next slide. Great. Maybe we can.
All right. So Wayne, the way we're doing questions is the most common way is people are typing into their question box some questions, and then as we get those, I'll put them up at the appropriate time. And then we can either ask those questions on their behalf, or we can unmute their mics and they'll ask those directly. So that is, but right now we have no current questions. So go ahead with the next slide.
Perfect. So the Respect resource line is a byproduct of Henry twisting my arm. We've implemented that line for Scouts Canada. We just finished training every Scout leader in Canada on the Activity Leader program, 22,000 as a matter of fact. And we've offered that line up for all of their activity leaders who are into or are certified on our program. And Skate Canada has launched the Respect Resource line for all of their folks that are using the Activity Leader program. And we're now offering it to Synchro. What the line does, I look at it as a traffic cop. So people take our training, they learn about abuse, bullying, harassment, discrimination. They're given scenarios and case studies and expert clips in our program, and suddenly it twigs something in their own life, in their own environment, in their coaching role, or senior athlete role, as is the case with Synchro Canada, and they say, something doesn't feel right. I don't feel comfortable necessarily calling my coach or a colleague coach or the president of the organization I'm involved with, and I really need to get some advice, not necessarily counseling, well, not counseling at all, but more of an expert, unbiased opinion through an anonymous source that can point you in the right direction. And the line is manned with individuals that are bilingual and also understand the human rights laws in each province and where people would need to go. Is it child protection services? Is it police? Or do you need to call your sport organization? In the case of the direction to the sport organization, that would be Joel, who has kindly, I guess, volunteered to be the contact for Synchro Canada. So that's where that individual will be directed. And I just put a very quick synopsis of a call below. The line does not get a lot of traffic. That's the good news. And when we do get a call, the good news is that somebody's getting some help which potentially they would not have had access to. And when you get down to these types of calls, they're very critical, very low in number, but high in criticality. And this is just a synopsis, and we're actually putting together some others that are real life scenarios that actually have occurred through the line. And this is the kind of stuff that we're dealing with. And you can just read through that quickly before I move to the next slide.
Wayne, can I add a couple of comments to this slide? Because I think I am so pumped about this this service. Actually, this resource line is something that has been one of our dreams on the board for a year or so, and we looked at many different options there and resources. I know that Government of Canada Sport Dispute Resolution Council, a lot of people are trying to set this up, and it's just not going very fast. And so you're the first one to offer this, and I think it's at the right level. What public companies have is they have something called a whistleblower line, and when there's a problem, people don't know where to turn to, and so they have this. And so you're mandated by law to have a whistleblower line. This isn't quite a whistleblower line, it's a resource line, but it has a similar kind of function in terms of if you don't know where to go to, it gives you a chance to go somewhere, and that feels safe, and it's anonymous. And this line is a resource 24/7, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, by qualified people with the Respect and Sport group. And it'll be a great resource for everybody in Synchro in Canada that have taken the the activity leader program. So the key is you have to have taken the activity leader program, and as you see, there's been dozen or more than 100 that have taken it, and so it both nationally and then across all the provinces, that gives all those athletes a chance to, and coaches, officials, whoever it is, a resource that they can go to if they have any questions. And from there, as Wayne says, he gives us a chance to go. The person then has a chance to go, or given the opportunity to go wherever they want, with an internal resource here in Synchro Canada, through Joel, through his position as the head of the Finance and Audit Committee. I think we're one of the first sports to offer this, and so I think it's very exciting. I know the athletes, the coaches, the IST have all asked for this. I know that sometimes there's so much stress in a high performance environment, you don't know where to go, or have we crossed the line, or who do I talk to? What's the normal protocol? So this is a very important thing for us, and ultimately it'll save Synchro Canada money, because if we end up with problems that cost us thousands and thousands of dollars in terms of investigations or complaints or whatever, I know that every time something serious happens, I'm going like, oh, what's the cost of this? And so Roland or Wayne, I think you'll help us a lot in terms of managing the expectations in the community.
Well, thanks, Henry. Yeah, we're very excited about it, and ultimately, our goal is to just make it an integral part of the Respect in Sport Activity Leader program for every organization using it. But there's economic implications, there is staffing implications, and I'm working through all that. I talked to the I think it's the SRDCC, or I can't remember what the acronym is, but they're interested in this type of line as well. So we're looking at some integration over time, but it's available for Synchro, and we'll be able to get some data. Again, it's not highly used, but when people need it, they really need it. So maybe we can move to the next slide. And if anybody's got a question on the resource line, I can do it now, or I can do it at the end too.
Yeah, I mean, my expectation is this will be like 1 or 2 calls every quarter at most, is typically what these whistleblower lines have, and not that high volume. But
exactly.
thank you for taking us as one of your first sports as a pilot. So thank you.
Well, thanks for twisting my arm, Henry. Keeping girls in sport. I'm not sure this is going to be the official title. I'm very excited about it. Our team is very excited about it, and it really sits within the sweet spot of everything that we're trying to do, and that is create safer environments for everyone to participate in sport, and this is really an extension of that. We were approached about a year and a half ago by Jumpstart, the charity that funds sports, a lot of sports, or helps to, and they've got a real mandate within their priority list at Jumpstart to do more for women involved in sport. And lo and behold, there's a program out there that's being given in a classroom environment by someone by the name of Vicky Harbour out of the U of A. And lo and behold, you get PD credits for attending those workshops. And I won't go through all of the history, but we started developing this for Jumpstart exclusively for the leaders that they have within communities and their own volunteer workers within the 4 retail or 5 or 6 retail companies that are involved in Jumpstart events. And it's expanded, not beyond delivering it for Jumpstart yet, but there's certainly lots of discussion going on about how we could expand it beyond the Jumpstart world. The content, well, obviously one of the key factors is that adolescent girls leave sport at a rate of 6 to 1 to boys. Question is why? And if there's some answers there, we're trying to provide those answers in this program to turn that phenomenon around. One of the big things is what motivates girls in sport that may come as a shock to some of us, that I know it did to me as I'm going through the curriculum as someone who coached my daughter's softball team. I learned some of it. I didn't learn all of it. And it is a different set of skills that I believe, having gone through all of this, that coaches need to keep those young ladies motivated and enthusiastic about sport. There's social and psychological aspects of young women that are different, and people need to be understanding of so they can deal with them in the context of being a coach. And physical development and injury management is a whole other theme that again is different than you would expect, just kind of walking into it having never coached girls before. We've involved the Coaching Association of Canada, CAUSE, several NSOs and PSOs, and I mean several, that are very interested in having this program available online for their the leaders of the women in their programs. And it will be about, we're just doing some serious production this weekend, actually. It looks like it's going to be about 90 minutes. The English version will launch in January and the French in April. And we haven't figured out the pricing when and if we make it available to the greater population, which would be outside the Jumpstart realm, hopefully in the the general coaching population within Canada, and it will be delivered very similar to all of the Respect program, the parent program, the activity leader program, the workplace program. And because of the work we've done already with the CAC in terms of automatic connection to the locker and NCCP PD credits or PD credits period, we're hoping to have a model like that available for organizations that want to get this program to their coaches and leaders that are involved in the realm of leading young women. So that's keeping girls in sport.
Wayne, so a couple of things on that. First off, as you know, we're 99% women in our sport, female. So certainly this will be very, very relevant to us in terms of the information. Plus, when you told me about it, you talked about the gender, differences in gender between the boys and girls, what their psychology is. So as we approach the getting boys into the sport, it'll be a good learning tool even for our coaches in terms of what to look for and what the differences really are. So that's good. So when you told me about it at our coffee about a month ago, I was certainly excited. And when you offered it to us again as one of the first sports to do it, again, I thank you very much for that, because I think it's a resource that we really need. We have 3 questions. Okay. I'll read them because they're straightforward. I think they are, at least. First one is Rayanne Rose from the president of Synchro BC. Thank you for this resource line. We had a situation, and everywhere we turned to for help, we couldn't seem to get it. This is very helpful, so thank you very much.
Fantastic.
Okay, second one was, can officials take the Respect in Sport certification course? If yes, how? If no, is there a future option? I mean, I'll take the first stab at it. Is that our goal had been certainly at the national level to make it mandatory throughout the Synchro Canada realm. So that would be everybody here. But we've offered it to all the provinces to implement at their own pace. We certainly encourage people to do that. And if you can't get it through your province, we have a resource within-house. Lisa Pagliaro is our project manager, so just call our office and do that. Lisa, anything else to add to that? Put Lisa on the spot here. Or maybe Jackie. All right, seems to be that's the answer then. So feel free to call the office, and yes, officials can take it. We're hoping to expand it to get our committee leaders all involved with it too. Last question.
And Henry, yes. Henry, maybe I can just add, we designed it. If you've taken the activity leader program, you'll notice that we really have designed it. That's why we call it activity leaders, because we look at judges, officials, etc., as having the same purview as a coach would in terms of interacting with the athlete. And there's no doubt that coaches, judges, referees, umpires, we have them taking the program as part of the activity leader audience across the country in several sports: baseball, soccer, hockey, gymnastics. So absolutely, your judges and officials should be taking it, and we've designed it to be taken in that respect.
Right, and at our national level, at the board, we've talked about making it mandatory for our international judges. And so I think that, again, that'll be something that over time we'll want to do that to set the tone and give them the resources. Last question, the numbers provided from, this is from Kathleen Reynolds, the executive director from, oh, we have some, okay. We have Kathleen Reynolds. Cheryl, I'm going to mute your mic. There we go. Kathleen Reynolds, the ED of Saskatchewan. The numbers provided from each province, i.e. 106 in Manitoba and 56 in Saskatchewan, are these Synchro specific people?
My guess is yes, as long as the database in, certainly for all the other provinces other than Saskatchewan and Manitoba, they're absolutely Synchro only, because that's in your database. I can double check if you think they might be a little bit out of whack, because the database in Manitoba under Sport Manitoba and SAS Sport would have their own drop-down menu, and I believe Synchro is separate and therefore those numbers would just be Synchro, but I can double
Okay.
check if there's some question.
All right, Wayne. We're I think that's the only questions we have, and I just noticed we're 23 minutes after the hour, so I'm going to maybe push ahead. But like, really, thank you for each one of those slides. Is very exciting in terms of the resources you provided for us, and we certainly have enjoyed partnering with Respect in Sport, and hope it's a long-term partnership. It will be a long-term partnership.
Well, thank you. Have a good day, the rest of you. And if you need anything more, you can get a hold of me directly, and I'm happy to help. Take care.
Thanks, Wayne. Okay, bye. All right, let's move along to the next item on the agenda, which is recently Synchro Canada has pledged that we would follow the responsible coaching movement. It's been around for a while, but we wanted to understand what that commitment was and what was required. And so that commitment does have a number of components to it, and so we thought we'd get Shelley Coolidge to talk about what those are.
Okay, so first off,
hi Shelley, welcome to the call.
Okay, thank you very much, Henry. I just want to confirm that everybody can hear me here okay. So Henry, if you could just
that's good.
Okay,
yeah, I can hear you. There's a bit of a wind or background noise coming from your mic, I believe.
Okay, is that any better?
Better, yeah. Sounds like you were standing in a baseball field somewhere. Okay.
Could be me breathing at this end.
All right.
Okay, so first off, I just want to thank Henry, Jackie, and Synchro Canada for the opportunity to speak with everybody today about the responsible coaching movement. That it's also an honor for me to be able to follow Wayne and the Respect Group and congratulate them for all the work that they're doing. Now, if I could have you just flip to the next slide. That today, the three things that I'm really going to speak to you about around responsible coaching movement have to do with what we call phase one. And the focus of phase one was keeping sport healthy and safe with a real focus towards minors, but also considering your coaches and volunteers in sport. So phase one is a call to action, and it's around the rule of two, or I believe Synchro is going to be referring to this as a companion program, background screening, and then respect and ethics training. Wayne spoke to you a lot on respect and ethics training, so we're not going to get into that as much here today. I'll get you to flip to the next slide. So why you should be part of this, and Synchro has signed on here to the pledge, and I said we encourage all the PSOs and your LSOs as well to take the pledge. But really it's that sport in Canada has a legal and ethical responsibility to mitigate risk for athletes and especially minors, and that the responsible coaching movement is a proactive means to communicate and act and to share with the public your commitment to address key areas of risk. And again, based on the steps that Synchro has taken, you are in fact the leader in the country, and you're signing on to the Activity Leaders Program and the training in those areas. Really, again, it shows your commitment to protecting the people involved in your sport. The next slide here, and you can read through the next slide later on your own a bit, but it's around the vicarious liability. And again, that we got legal opinion from our legal counsel because there's a lot of question around why do we need to be part of this. And we're saying that in fact, sport in general and organizations in general do have responsibility to ensure that their coaches and volunteers are acting appropriately, and that we need to make sure we have proper policies and procedures in place. And you'll have a presentation on the work that you guys are doing again to show that you're leaders, in fact, in Canada in this area. So then, again, the next slide here that we put together is the continuum. And in sport in Canada, and just in any crisis in general, that when a crisis happens, everybody's really quick for change and to support change. But what we're saying is that let's get ahead of that, and let's educate for change. We're asking the organizations to audit their policies and practices. Again, you guys have completed that. And then the next portion of the continuum is around our implementation, the implementation around Rule of Two, around background screening, around standardized education and sport across the country, and then continuing into our ongoing education and training and sustainable change. I'll get you to actually just flip quickly past the next slide. So I'll get you to go advance 2 here. Now, with respect to the Rule of Two and responsible coaching movement, the gold medal standard for Rule of Two is to have 2 screened or certified coaches with your athletes at all times. And now, in saying that that's a gold medal standard, we also realize that that's not possible in all areas. And so we're looking for, companion support, having, another adult present, having, 2 coaches present. Again, it may not be a certified coach, but it may be a coach in training or some other support, so that we in fact do not have a coach and an athlete in an area either on or off the field of play where in fact the athlete and or the coach could potentially be at risk. So the Rule of Two is about, again, supporting and protecting people on both sides. And I listened, I'm not sure if it was Joel that was speaking earlier around, the hotline, or maybe it was you, Henry, that was speaking about the hotline and having the ability to, make a call and call somebody out, or around the whistleblower option. And really, again, if we have 2 coaches available and around, it's making sure that in fact you've got somebody there that's going to help keep the ethical practices of coaches at a higher level.
Well, I think Shelley, it seems like it's a combination of things. It's the training involved with the respect and sport. It's the Rule of Two, and then it's also the screening, and all 3 complement each other, supplement by the policy. So it's hard to do one without the other and make sense of it.
Absolutely, it is, and I think here too that when we take a look, for example, at background screening, and I'll have you then move to the next slide. That around background screening, we see that we have low risk areas in sport, and those would be, for example, maybe a parent volunteer who's standing and just pointing people in a direction at an event, that head this way or head that way, but they don't have access to the minors or people with disabilities, so a low risk individual. Then we have medium risk, which again, the person may have a bit of a supervisory role within your organization, and they may have some limited access to minors or people with disability. And then we have high risk, and so those are individuals in high risk assignments. So it could be a national team coach, could be a provincial team coach, club team head coach, but they're people who have continual access to minors and or people with disability. And in those areas that we said, it's essential in a high risk area that the person is screened more thoroughly. And again, the screening more thoroughly is one about a police record check, and I'll get back to that in more detail, but it's also around our job posting and the reference checks we do on those individuals. Are you following up to see, has this person moved from club to club to club, or from province to province to province? Has this individual, been involved in a real, responsible, ethical, supportive way with athletes? Do they have great references? Are the references, not only a parent, but somebody from the local organization?
Yeah, Shelley, one of the things I've been reluctant to introduce police checks at the national level simply because people take that as a panacea. They go, oh, gee, we've done the police check and now the screening's done. And I think hopefully you will help us in terms of understanding what proper screening looks like, because screening isn't just the police checks or isn't just reference checks. It's an ongoing thing that happens over time. So that's why this is very exciting for us, is that it's not just one thing. It's helping us to do the process properly.
Right, it's a bit of a blend. So if you could flip there just as well to the next slide here, and really what we outline around like the coach and volunteer screening again was a comprehensive job posting, the reference checks, criminal record checks, and again what we encourage, and this is an example taken from sports that have been at this for a real long time, that first off, the vulnerable sector verification or vulnerable sector check, we feel is the essential and very important first check that is done, because that will go through and take a look at, has this person received a previous pardon? Is there something on the check that you in fact should be aware of? Following the one vulnerable sector check, then we encourage people to do an enhanced police information check. And the reason for that versus just the standard criminal record check is that the criminal record check will search the local database, but the enhanced police information check will search multiple databases. And again, we encourage you to do the police record check. However, the police record check is only as current as the moment that it was taken. It's one piece. And secondly, it takes time for things to be recorded. So that's where we feel that the reference check is a real essential element, even more essential than taking the next step to the criminal record check. We, at the CAC level, we in fact require 2 reference checks and a criminal record check for anybody who becomes a registered or chartered professional coach. That again, we encourage interviews. And that because again, then you get to know the individual, you get to be able to ask questions that are specific to the individual, in addition to the 3 previous steps of the posting, the reference checks, and the criminal record check. Now I'll get you to flip now to the next slide here. And the next slide too is going to also speak, again, to Wayne talked about the respect and ethics training. But another critical piece around the respect and ethics training is the consistent standardized education. So, right across the country, it's like, what is your sport doing? Do you require standardized training from province to province, from club to club? Are you all working like on the same track? And that for what you require of your coaches and in forms of education, that again, this activity leaders training is a nice PD addition, but what's required before we get to the PD step? So, again, we've stated here that make ethical decisions has now become a component that, every coach must take across the country. We're also encouraging the respect and sport training offered by Respect Group. There's additional training in a program from a program called Commit to Kids, which is also additional exceptional training and also requires and provides PD points. But I'm just going to peel it back again to, from an educational perspective, where is kind of Synchro in the continuum, and that with requiring standardized education currently across the country, because that is says to your coaches that, we're on the same track, we're on board here, and that we in fact, believe in the standard that we are going to be asking for. So I think just, quickly, from my perspective, in summary, that Synchro is doing an exceptional job of auditing their policy and procedure here on the national level. I encourage, at provincial level, that if you have any questions or need any support around the implementation of the responsible coaching movement, please give me a call, and I will do what I can here to support and help you out. We have a number of tools available to you. I will be the first one to say that our website has so much information, but it's too much information for a lot of people to figure out where do I start. So if you need help navigating through that, please give me a call, and I'll take the time to walk you through that, because I believe a lot in this program, and that to make sports safer for, again, not only the children that participate, but the coaches and volunteers that are involved.
Shelley, one of the things that helped me on that is, because I didn't know where to start either, your website is actually brilliant, and one of the things that was there was it showed the 4 pillars that you talked about of the responsible coaching movement, and to me, it's you just start down each of those paths on each of those pillars, the screening, the rule of 2, the policies, and then the respect training. And so I think, and it gives a timeline and a suggestion on how to do that. So, and there's a specific timeline for NSOs, PSOs, and clubs. And so I encourage everybody that's listening to go to their website, look at that. You can implement that in your own club, your own organization, and make it a safer place for everybody. Your website is great. We have 2 questions. One is from Desiree. It's not really a question, but she said, going back to Wayne's presentation, the numbers for Manitoba look accurate. All of our coaches must take the course. So she was pretty comfortable with what Wayne showed there in terms of numbers. The second question was from Jill Nelson, who's the president of Synchro Ontario, and she says, please confirm that we will all be receiving copies of all presentations. And yes, the answer is yes, you'll be getting copies of all presentations. This one, again, is a stellar presentation, and that was excellent. So thank you very much, Shelley, for that.
You're welcome. And just so that everybody knows too, I shared a resource with Jackie that was a Commit to Kids workbook around some policy support and policy development that, again, it will help you provide some turnkey, quick solutions to policies that maybe your local sport organizations may need, in fact, to implement here moving forward. Thank you guys very much for taking the time here today to listen to me about responsible coaching movement.
Good. Thanks, Shelley, and thanks for all the resources you give us, because it helps us to make sure that we are following something that's proper, and that we're not reinventing the wheel on something as well. So thanks for that. The next item on the agenda, because we're talking about policies and good governance, is Ruth Belcher, and I don't see Ruth Belcher as a organizer, so I assume that she's sitting with Synchro Ontario.
Yes, hi Henry, it's Ruth here. I'm sitting with Jill and Mary in the Synchro Ontario offices, and I understand, Jackie, you're going to run the slides for me.
She will do the slides. So welcome, Ruth. Just to introduce Ruth very quickly. Ruth is has been chairing our policy working group, which is a working group from the board. I've been sitting on it, and I call this policy working group the rock stars. They've done such a thorough job of reviewing different policies. We started with doing an inventory of the different provinces and what they have. And I won't go into Ruth's presentation, but I just appreciate all the work that the policy working group has done. It's a first-class group that takes a lot of effort and pride in what they're doing. So go ahead, Ruth.
Thank you, Jackie. If we could just move on to the next slide, please. So I just wanted to say it's a privilege to follow Wayne and Shelley because a lot of what they spoke about today has been featured in some of the policy work that we have been looking at over the last number of months. And I also would note that the Risk Management Committee has identified policies as one of the areas of key risk for the organization, and that's something that this group is looking to address. The members of the group include myself, Shannon Higgins, and Henry, as well as Jackie, and until recently, Lorna Proudfoot from Newfoundland, who's had to step down for personal reasons. So it's a small group, but I do think we've been making some progress lately, and I'm pleased to have the opportunity to share that with you. Jackie, next slide, please. So I know Henry likes to look at the Synchro Canada strategic plan as sort of the anchor for the work that we do generally. And you will recall that there are 3 ultimate strategic goals for 2024, the third of which is a professionally managed and aligned organization. And that's really where this policy working group comes in, aligning ourselves at the NSO and PSO level on shared goals and priorities, enhancing our capacity with best organizational practices. And so that's where this policy committee fits into the strategic plan. Next slide, please. So we are looking at focusing on collaboration among the NSO and the PSOs to introduce best organizational practices, recognizing that provinces are at different places when it comes to policy development, and that was made clear actually in the policy inventory that we conducted. Some PSOs are quite advanced, often in response to government requirements, and depending on the size of the participation in the province. Some PSOs less so. So there is an ultimate goal here of developing policies at the NSO level that can push down into the provinces and improve overall organizational practices. I just wanted to make a quick note here as well that sport organizations are increasingly assessed against governance or financial control requirements as a condition of their funding. In Ontario, where I'm on the Synchro Swim Ontario board, there's an Ontario sport recognition policy that has intimately tied our governance framework and our policies to funding. We also see that at the national level with the Sport Canada Accountability Framework. And I think this is something that's pushing itself across the country. And so for at the national level as well as at the provincial level, organizations looking for funding will have to provide evidence of good policies in order to get that funding. Next slide, please. Henry's already touched on this, so we'll move on from there. So what have we done so far? We started with a survey of current policies at the NSO and PSO level, and we created a policy inventory. That policy inventory was shared with the provinces back in April. If you don't have that or can't find it or would like to see it again, just let me know or Jackie know and we'll get that out to you. I think the only province that hasn't been included in that so far is Quebec through a lack of language skills on the part of our committee, to be frank. So if there's anyone in Quebec that would like to join us and help with that, we would appreciate that support. We've also looked at our policy priorities, starting off with the question, are any policies required by law? And if they are, were there gaps? And we have looked at the Synchro Canada state with respect to unpublished and duplicate policies, with a focus on repealing duplicate or out-of-date policies, unearthing unpublished policies, and to the extent possible, having single policies covering a topic rather than multiple policies. That sounds like it should be straightforward, but actually is a fair bit of work. Ultimately, the long-term goal, once we've developed policies for use at the national level, is to develop template policies for use by the provinces and to provide ongoing help and support to the provinces in that work. Next slide, please. So what we've been up to between February and now, we've developed policy formatting standards. We want a single look and feel to Synchro Canada policies. As I said, we've developed a policy inventory. That is a work in progress. We organize the policies under categories that were used by the federal and provincial sport ministries. And as I said, we shared that with the PSOs back in April, but recognizing that this will be something that's evolving and will need to be updated. Next slide. There was a finance policy suite that Henry drafted and was approved by the Synchro Canada board earlier, I think May or June, Henry, that include delegation of authority and financial stewardship, as well as financial transactions with stakeholders, which addresses travel, accommodation, and meals guidelines. And so anyone who hasn't looked for those, or perhaps is looking at your own finance policies, might want to take a look at those. We've also been focusing on the conduct suite, and that is an area that ties in very closely to the work that Wayne and Shelley have both referred to. We are looking at a code of conduct that is an all-encompassing code of conduct that addresses conduct and ethics, as well as discrimination and harassment. And embedded in that code of conduct is going to be dispute resolution and appeals. So it will be a single code that addresses all those aspects of conduct at the national level. At this point, we have developed the conduct and ethics piece, including discrimination and harassment, and that has been approved at the most recent September Synchro Canada board meeting, subject to a couple of, I think, tweaks, particularly around the respect in sport requirements. And we're currently working on the dispute resolution and appeals process. The dispute resolution, just so you're aware, will build into this policy the program that Wayne has been speaking to. So the dispute resolution process for Synchro Canada will tie in the respect resource line and provide some guidance around that. So I would anticipate that the full conduct suite should be available within, let's say, the next month to six weeks. Of course, distribution of these is more difficult at the Synchro Canada level because these documents all require translation, so there is a bit of lag time for publication of these policies. The other policy, and this was one where there was a gap that we've now closed and was approved at the September board meeting, was privacy. And again, once this is translated, that should be available to you on the Synchro Canada website. This is an easy one, I think, in most instances for provinces to look at and adapt for themselves. There are some provincial requirements in BC and Alberta and Quebec, but for the most part, the rest of the provinces should be able to simply adjust this policy for their own needs. And I'll be developing an ad hoc a template for provinces to do that over the next little while as well, which will circulate. Next slide, please, Jackie. So where we go from here, I think we have the support of the Synchro Canada board for this working group to continue with its activities until our task is complete. And what that looks like is minimum governance standards that are implemented at the national level, and ultimately we're hoping are supported at the provincial level as well. Our immediate priorities are to finish the conduct suite, so finish the dispute resolution and appeal process. There is some discussion around whether we need a whistleblower policy given the respect resource line, and we'll have that conversation with the Synchro Canada board. And we're also currently drafting a conflict of interest policy. That is actually already available, so it's a case for us of just looking at that policy and updating it. And then I think the final slide, Jackie. So following completion of those policies, our next phase of policy priorities will incorporate what I've been given as a PSO policy wish list. Concussion policy, we have in Ontario a fantastic base for that, and we'll be working on adjusting that for the national level and getting that out to provinces as well. We're looking at social media, selection processes, screening, which is further to Henry, your comments. And if there is anything else that the provinces are looking for support with, they should contact me directly or Jackie, and we will add that to the list. So that's everything from me, and if there are questions, I would be happy to answer them.
Ruth, again, thank you very much. I know the amount of work that you and Shannon and Lorna and Jackie did around the code of conduct, looking at and combining all those things was tremendous. We do have one question, or it's a comment actually. It's from Julie. Is it Vezina or Vezina? She's the ED from Quebec, and she just wanted to say here, hi, I just wanted to confirm that Quebec is willing to join this committee. So obviously,
fantastic.
the
That's
more
wonderful.
Yes, the more we often talked about, even Quebec comes at it from a different perspective sometimes in terms of the language and the approach. So definitely very welcome to join the committee. So thank you, Julie. Any other questions? Seeing none, we can come back later on, I suppose, but let's keep on going. We've got 5 minutes, and I don't want to limit it to 5 minutes, but we do have Julie Healy online. That's our last part of the conversation, and that's to update us in terms of some of our strategic objectives overall with the athlete. Julie Healy is our new Chief Sport Officer in Synchro Canada. It's been a very great addition. So take it away, Julie.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Absolutely.
Okay, great. So 5 minutes, it's great listening. People have said listening.
Julie, please feel free to take about 10 minutes or even 15.
Okay. Well, people have said listening to me speak is like drinking from a fire hydrant, so I accept the challenge. Okay, I'm not going to go into great detail. I really tried to update where we were at on Sheila Croxton's high performance report that was submitted as to what the way forward would look like and give you a status update, but I will try to touch on a few points. And I'll start with the responsible coaching movement commitment. I'm excited to say that as part of our coaching process this summer, all coaches were asked to complete a vulnerable person's police check, as well as take the Respect in Sport module. I'm still chasing after some of them because this is a new requirement, but I'm happy with the way that it is going. As we move forward, this will become a requirement of application. So it will be documents you will need to submit when you apply for one of our coaching positions. Understanding that this will be a significant change in how we do things. Over the course of this next season, we'll list it as something they need to submit, but we will still give them time to get it done. It'll always be a requirement of being selected, and so we won't select a coach who hasn't taken care of those things. The other point I would like to make is that through my 6 months in the sport, I'm a little disappointed to see the amount of professional behavior that I'm seeing in the coach community. Yes, coaches are competitive, and yes, you know, they're pushing against each other. But I find them to be disrespectful to each other. You know, being competitive is not a license to behave in an unprofessional way. I'm not comfortable with some of the conversations I see happening between coaches and athletes, that they're crossing lines that shouldn't be crossed. And so this is going to be a focus of one of our coach development things this season. We're going to work hard at describing professional behavior, what the non-negotiables are, and then helping coaches to understand what that looks like and develop. I'll jump into Own the Podium funding. Yes, great news. We did get Next Gen funding, which was awesome because we'd spent some of that money with Next Gen programming. And so it's great that we can go back and cover some of those expenses. It's important that everybody understand that we are now, our high performance program is now a Next Gen program from top to bottom. So the definition of Next Gen is 5 to 7 years to the podium, 5 to 8 years to the podium. We've declared as an organization we want to be on the podium in 2024. So if you put those two facts together, the reality is everything we're doing is Next Gen. We're working towards being on the podium in 2024. So we're a Next Gen program, and we have we exist at the senior, junior, 13 to 15 level for the purposes of 2024. Beyond 2024, we can actually incorporate 11, 12, but just a paradigm shift, which will change some of the conversations. The positive is because that's what we have a better opportunity to get funding to do the things we want to do to be on the podium. When I applied, so yes, we had a really short turnaround to redo our application and then present. And part of the process I did was I looked at some data to have an understanding of how we'd gotten to where we were at so that I could speak to facts when I presented on the podium. The interesting fact I found is that since day one of entering the Olympics, our gap from the top score on the podium has increased. There was a slight, there was a tiny adjustment in 1 year where it didn't increase, it actually decreased, but it was an insignificant amount. So what does that tell us? And I don't look at what the score is because the score goes up and down. It's not like the score continues to get higher. I looked at the gap between our score and the top score because that is a way to measure a trend. And the reality is we have been moving, our score has been moving away from the top of the podium since day one. So when we entered the Olympics, first as a solo and duet and then as a team, we were successful because the competitive stage wasn't all that crowded. The competitive stage got crowded pretty quickly, and so that's why we have a gap. So yes, it's time for change. I will publicly say, yes, I want to figure out what other countries are doing, and I don't want to follow other countries because then we'll just be behind other countries. We need to figure out ourselves, what are we going to do that gives us that advantage to move us ahead of countries. So a combination of, figuring out some successful practices, but figuring out as a country, Canada, who are we, what do we do, what do we look like? I had a coach say to me this week that we've lost that. When you go to the pool and you watch a country swim, you can tell who that country is, the better countries, without even knowing who they are, but you can't pick out Canada anymore. So we have to come up with we have to figure out our identity and then work towards being, recognizable as a country. We do have to reapply for On the Podium funding, and On the Podium is very, very strict on looking for fact-based evidence that we have athletes who can be on the podium in 2024. It was a little bit of a stretch for me to do that in our last presentation, but I had great help from Cara, Jen Langlois, and Sheila to kind of take the numbers we had and show some tendencies. The reality is it's very difficult for us as a sport to quantify where our athletes are at and where they need to be on the podium. So we're going to spend a great deal of energy over the next 2 months redefining our gold medal profile, redefining our winning style of play, keeping in mind what are we going to be as Canada, and then redefining our path to the podium. And then we got to get quantifiable information that we can assess and measure ongoing. Otherwise, we're not going to get any money. And so huge challenge to do, but I do believe this will help us get on the right path. Really quickly, the way forward. Quick on the what's coming next. The former November trials are being designed, and it's called the November Fall Development and Evaluation Camp. Note that the word development comes before evaluation, and so the focus will be on athlete and coach development. Yes, we need to select an athlete pool for this season. Yes, we need to nominate athletes for the athlete assistance program, but we need to ensure that our focus is sending athletes and coaches away with an enhanced toolbox for development. All that information, assuming we get our official notification from FINA of what all the new elements are, will be out the beginning of next week. Junior program, it's a World Championship year. Thank you to those of you that accepted my call to provide me with feedback. Plans, the plan for the junior program, the coach selection plan, the selection process and criteria, all underway. I would have liked to have gotten more feedback, but I will continue to ask, and hopefully more people will take me up when I ask them for, what do you think this should need to look like? Canada Winter Games, quick update. Obviously, with the removal of figures and the decision by the community that we will do a tech routine as opposed to figures. Working with Canada Winter Games right now to look at the facility and the pool time and propose a schedule that best incorporates that. At this stage in the game, we can't go too far out of the lines that have been drawn in the sand for the event because the organizers are well underway. But I'm confident we will find an acceptable compromise to add figures to the competition schedule. 13 to 15 and 11 to 12 program. Since getting input for our junior program was a little bit thin, I'm going to approach 13 to 15 and 11 and 12 in a different way. I'm going to be a little bit more formal in how we do consultation so that we as a country, NSO and PSOs, can figure out, look at Sheila's plan and figure out how we implement that plan moving forward, how it best works for everybody. My final comment would be on underlying everything that we are working to do. The most important thing we can do is take a hard look at our culture and make a significant shift in our everyday behaviors. After 6 months, here are some of my broad observations. The Synchro community is incredibly dedicated and passionate. That is the positive. The negative associated with that is that there is an emotional ownership many people have over what they do. Change is difficult, and it's normal for people to be defensive when something they have done, something that they have championed and passionate about is being changed. But people need to realize that those things that we have done is the foundation, and a strong foundation allows us to build new walls. So the analogy I'll use is, we have the foundation, we're going to use that foundation. And like the trend of new houses, we're turning our 1950 house with all these little rooms into an open concept house and can only be built on a strong foundation. So, people need to embrace change moving forward and really understand what is possible if we actually work together to get this done. My final comment will be, I spend far too much time unruffling people's feathers. And I'd say 70% of the time, they're ruffled and they don't have the right information. It's something somebody told them, so a rumor. And so I challenge everybody in the community that when you're having those conversations, if somebody tells you something and you're not sure it's factual, find out where they got their facts. And if they didn't get their facts, stop the telephone line right there and make it your mission in life to find out the source of truth. Then I can spend a little bit more time talking about what is possible instead of telling people what they heard isn't true. And that's it for me.
Well, Julie, thank you very, very much for that information. I think the updates and the amount of change happening is pretty amazing, and for all your work that you're doing. You've certainly hit the ground running in the last 6 months, and my two comments were, we really appreciate your understanding of both the culture of Synchro and the sport of Synchro, and your learning curve has been amazing. And the second thing is what I've heard from people in the community, which is that people are excited about having high-performance seniors throughout the country again. So that's very exciting. We do have, as far as I know, 2 questions here, both from Ontario. One was, will there be a 13-15 or 11-12 national program this season?
I don't want to say yes or no to that, because until I have a good conversation with the provinces about both of those programs, I don't want to commit one way or the other. I've had many conversations. I haven't had many conversations on the 11-12 program, but if you've read through Sheila's report, this will be essential for our long-term success. And so we need to get that going. We need to figure out what that looks like and how it actually works seamlessly with whatever the provinces are doing. On the 13 to 15 side, I will be honest, I've asked the question, is going to the Med Cup a good use of resources? Because it was an expensive year for the 13 to 15 athletes. And I think it's a fair question to ask. And the answer I've got is yes, we need to send a national team there. Yes, it's a good use of resources. And when you look at an athlete's competitive experience over the course of their career, one of my assessments is, and I've talked to many athletes, we don't compete enough. And that whole concept of not going to a competition till we are absolutely perfect, really, I have trouble getting my head around, because nothing replaces the competition, the feeling of a competition. So, you know, the general consensus I'm hearing from coaches is the 13 to 15 competition is an essential part of our athletes' pathway to success. But again, I want to have conversations with provinces to make sure that whatever this program looks like going forward, we're all on the same page and working together to move it that way.
So continuing from Ontario, one of their comments was, "Thank you, Julie." So we just added that comment in. So obviously, very successful answer there. The second question that Ontario had was, if we have defined the program as next gen, where do existing returning senior athletes fall?
They're next gen. They're considered next gen, and so, you know, and our senior athletes that are currently in the program, you know, alarm bells went off for them when we talked about 2024. But we can't blow up our team and start with, you know, we can't go to the 2020 Olympic Games, the 29 Pan Am Games, the 2019 World Championship with a team of all new people. You need to find the right balance between those athletes which you know aren't going to continue beyond 2020, and those which we know are part of the pool of athletes we're developing towards 2024. And so we just have to make sure that those athletes that are only going to 2020 bring to the table the right kind of leadership qualities, because that'll be a big part of their role, teaching the new wave of swimmers, you know, how to be successful at that level. So all senior athletes are still considered part of our next gen program. All of them are being considered for 2020, and hopefully some of them, you know, still have a little bit of length in their competing years and are looking beyond 2020. But just because they're going to 2020, it doesn't eliminate them.
One question was, how many senior athletes have returned?
Of the 13, well, of the 14, we had 5 that retired. Everyone knows Corinne Thomas retired after the Open. We had 4 more retire, and of the 9 that remained, 3 of them have returned to home cities to train. So we currently have a pool of 6 formerly centralized athletes still training at the center. That was our commitment to them as an organization, that we would support their training until the November camp, when we reestablished the athlete pool, to help them transition from being a full-time athlete in Montreal to learning to be a self-motivated, self-accountable athlete in this new decentralized model.
Perfect. So, Julie, I have 2 more comments, but I guess these are comments that people have posted in the question panel. One is from Sandy Holmquist. She says, "Thank you for letting us listen in this morning. I wish we had more time with Julie, and hope that updates will be sent out. Thank you again for the opportunity." And then Kathleen Reynolds, ED from Saskatchewan. Julie's comments were very impressive and informative. I appreciate the fact that she was very frank, and that what she's seen and heard within our community within the last 6 months, everyone needs to hear the truth, and then to move forward to something better. So thank you, Julie. That was spot on. You know, I think we're going to wrap it up at this point. It's already 11 minutes after the hour. Why don't we take a 4-minute break and come back at, say, 11:15 or 1:15 if you're in the Eastern time zone, and then we'll start the annual meeting. I don't want to start it too much too late. And thank you to all the presenters who showed up. So see you again in about 4 minutes.
One, two, three, four.
All right, why don't we get started here? It's quarter after the hour, so I think we should start with our Synchro Canada annual meeting. And so let me just turn the microphone back on where we had it there. Oops. There we go. That's thank you to Stefan for putting together that wonderful slideshow. I really, those by the way were many of the pictures that were posted on the for our World Aquatics Day on July 1st. It was sponsored by FINA. So thank you, Stefan, for your hard work on that. Always makes me excited to see all the great coaches and athletes and clubs participating in an event like that. It was put together very quickly, and it made a lot of us very proud. All right, so this is the formal part of the annual meeting. We've used the GoToWebinar session for the first time ever, and we've had 2 hours of practice on it now. I think I took Natalie Sear in the last session, had her hand raised, and I hand raised her. So sorry, Natalie, if you had a burning question there. Let's go while people are getting settled. Let's just do a call to order and welcome the delegates here. I'm the president. I'm Henry Scheel, and I'm honored to welcome all the members and delegates, the board members and guests for the 2017 annual meeting of Synchro Canada. As we're waiting for people to get settled, I just wanted to set the stage. We'll follow the agenda very closely. It's an annual meeting is a formal process. We'll have we have about 14 motions, but mostly they're what I call routine, straightforward motions. We'll have a mover, a seconder, discussion if necessary, and then a vote. Typically, for these kind of online sessions, we will just ask if there's any abstentions or disagreements. And that'll be the motion. We don't typically go through province by province on those unless there's a desire to do so. Other logistics, there's I think 7 of us as master presenters. Primarily it's Lisa Pagliaro, myself, and Jackie. And we will be able to control the flow of information here. Most of you are set as attendees. You can communicate a number of different ways. The most common way is raising your hand, which I've only had one person do that, Natalie, and I'm sorry I didn't acknowledge you there. But most commonly, people are typing questions into the question box, which you find on your screen. And then we have the choice of either, if they're straightforward, I'll just read the question. If they are more complex or I don't quite understand them, we turn on your mic and you have a chance to talk. One of the things Jackie and I have talked about is what we'll do is we'll consider unmuting at this level, at least at the webinar level, the mics of the delegates. And then you're free to unmute yourself and talk at any point. But that gives our 11 voting delegates the opportunity to talk more quickly. If it's too noisy, though, we'll have to mute you from this end here. That is basically it here. For the election itself, we're using a product called Simply Voting, which is different from that. The people have been voting that will be voting have tested this, and it seems to be working quite well. All right, so any other logistical things, Jackie?
Okay, this is a test. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank God. Sorry.
Right.
It's been an interesting morning. I'm not going to lie to you. Okay, no, actually, Henry, I think you've covered all the logistical items. I think we're good to go.
Okay, good. I know the office has been working hard in the background to make sure everything's going well. All right, and thank you for all the hard work leading up to this. I know it's not just the annual meeting; it's the information session, and the finance is a lot of work. So the agenda will follow closely. The first thing is the roll call or the attendance. So I don't know how to do this, Jackie. I'm not going to say present. We'll just see if they're here, I guess.
Well, I think our goal is to unmute all of the voters. So maybe I'll just go through the list at this point right now, and I'll see who's
Michael
on the
Anderson
list.
Jones. Let's go through Michael Anderson. I've unmuted you.
Yes.
But you're self-muted, all right? Prince Edward Island, Jody Williams. She's not online.
I'm not unmuted.
You are. Whoever said unmuted is unmuted. Prince Edward Island, Jody Williams. No. Nova Scotia, Pam Kidney, who carries the vote for. You've unmuted her. So Jackie, will you do that muting? Otherwise, both of us are pressing the same button. Okay. So now it says attendee is muted. I will unmute you, Pam, and then you have to. Oh, now if you want to self-mute yourself, you can.
Yeah, I'm here.
Good. Yourself if you want later on. New Brunswick, Natalie Sear. I saw Natalie. I've unmuted you, and you are self-muted now. Hi, Natalie.
I am here. Hi.
Hi. Sorry, I cut you off there. I didn't acknowledge your hand earlier on. Julia Vezina, or Vicina. I think I saw you here. Yes, there you are. I have unmuted you. Hi, Julie. Microphone's on. Hi. How do you pronounce your last name?
Vezina.
Vezina. All right. Bonjour, Merci. Thank you for coming.
Bonjour.
Carrying the vote for Quebec, since Mark LaBelle could not make it. Ontario, we have Jill Nelson. I will unmute Jill. If she's not, you are unmuted already. You're self-muted. So welcome, Jill. Then we have, let's go down the list here. Desiree Vandervelde. I saw Desiree in the line. Hi, Desiree. I have unmuted you.
Okay.
Done.
Hi there.
Hi, welcome.
Thanks.
Thanks for your comments earlier on. Saskatchewan, I saw Kathleen. Both Desiree and Kathleen have been asking questions as well. So Kathleen, you are unmuted. Your microphone is up.
Yes, I'm here. Thank you.
Hi, welcome. And Kathleen carries the vote for Saskatchewan. Helen Kelly. Helen is now unmuted, and your microphone is on. Hi, Helen.
Good morning, and thank you. Chris Hampshire is with me, and Jen Muzia. Jen will be leading at the point of voting.
Okay, thank you. Well, thank you all three for attending. I know you've got a busy weekend in Alberta, so Helen carries the vote for Alberta. And in British Columbia, Rayanne Rose, she had made a comment earlier on. Rayanne, you are unmuted, and your microphone is on.
Hi there.
Hi, welcome.
Thank you.
And thanks for your earlier comment. And then Keith McGuire from the Yukon, and I don't see Keith on the list. All right. So I take that to mean that we have 9 people, 9 voting delegates. We don't have Prince Edward Island or the Yukon. Okay, so I have a question already from Natalie Sear. I'm not sure where to go for the voting. Can you direct us to that? So let's cover that when we do the voting, but we'll make sure that you have the ability to vote. All right. So note that the bylaws require that if it's not the president that's voting, that we have formal assignments of the votes, and we do have those. As I said, Quebec, Julie Vezina, Saskatchewan, Kathleen Reynolds, and Nova Scotia, Pam Kidney. So we have 9 out of 11 members present, and that forms a quorum. So I can confirm that all the voting delegates are registered in good standing. I know that Jackie did that over the last week, and we have authority to go forward with this annual meeting. So thank you very much. Now to continue with the rest of the roll call, and Jackie, step in if there's anything I've missed on this. But in terms of the rest of the roll call, we have the Synchro Canada board members. There's 6 board members. Judy Burdett is here. Guy Cote is not present. Guy unfortunately informed me that 2 days ago his mother was getting more ill and very ill, and so he was unable to make it. We're very sad about that. Gail Donahue has joined. Send a text. Joel Sanders is here, and Margie Schuett is here. And then myself, Henry Shields, the president, and therefore your chair. Other board members are Shelby Harding, Athletes Chair Council, has been here since the beginning. Hello, welcome, Shelby. And then Jackie, our CEO, is on the board. Synchro Canada staff members, we have Jackie Buckingham, also on the board. Julie Healy, thanks for the presentation, Julie. Stéphane Cote, thanks for your great presentation. I love those slides. Cheryl McAvoy, Lisa Pagliarlo, and I think that's it for staff. I'm just going down the list here. Yeah, that's it for staff. All right, and then we have observers. That these are people that have come as registered members, and I will write them. I will just read the ones that I think are here, and if I don't call your name, because I see your name as you registered on the attendee list, but please feel free to, if I miss your name, please let us know through the question box or raising your hand. So observers, we have 29 attendees listed in total, plus a couple of people that are called panelists, which are our candidates. So in terms of attendees, we have Alicia Renault, Amy Bush, Cassandra Crowder, Erica Lindner, Helen Mokas, Isabel McCann, Jennifer Keith, who haven't I, okay, going down the list here, Liana Sotil, Lisa Balcom, Lisa Pagliaro, sorry Lisa, I didn't mention you as staff, Louise Kennedy, Michael Anderson Jones we've mentioned, Natalie Lagrange, Sandy Holmquist, and Tanya Pohl, who was not mentioned previously. She's on as well, and I think I have to slide my thing down. Teresa McGuire. So that is are the attendees, the general membership, and then in terms of our registrants, we have a couple of candidates that are now also shown as panelists, and they are Lindsay Duncan, Rebecca Curry. I think that's it. That's who's on our annual meeting. In total, we've got 36 people joined. So the first order of business is, as board members have a voice in this meeting, but no vote. I would entertain a motion to allow Synchro Canada staff and observers to have a voice, but not a vote at this proceeding. So the idea is that generally our voting delegates will be the ones to speak, but time permitting, we'd like to be able to entertain questions from the general delegates and also and have staff members speak as well. So can I have a mover for that motion, please?
I will move that.
All right.
Jill.
Jill, thank you, Jill.
Jill Nelson.
Yes. Seconder? Kathleen's got a microphone. Yeah, great, thank you. All right. So any objections to that? No. Oh, Pam Kidney writes, Henry, Maurice Hurley is with me. So hi, Maurice, welcome as well. So thank you for that. So we can clear that question off. Natalie Sear says, perfect. Thank you. All right. I think I've introduced the guests as well. Here's the list of guests. Okay, so I think we've got who's in the room with us, and our first order of business then will be, that's the roll call, the approval of the agenda. So I would call for a motion, first of all, to approve the agenda.
Desiree.
Thanks, Desiree.
Also, Helen Kelly.
Thanks, Helen. So any other amendments, discussions, additions that you want to add to the agenda? Any discussion, any comments? We'll wait maybe 10 seconds generally to see if there's any other comments, additions. All right. So are there any people, let's go for the vote then. Anybody that's opposed or wants to abstain from approving the agenda? Great. Okay, thank you very much. So the agenda has been approved. Next item on the agenda was the approval of the 2016 annual minutes. We'll now call for the minutes for the motion to approve the minutes of the September 17th, 2016 annual meeting. So the motion will be, and as you see on the left-hand side, by the way, Jackie's running a slideshow that has the motions written on them and follows the order of our slides. So thank you for that, Jackie. So the motion in this case will be that the minutes of the 2016 annual meeting be approved as presented and currently. Could I have a mover for that?
Natalie's here.
Thanks, Natalie. Seconder? I see Desiree.
Desiree.
Thank you.
I'm scared to speak.
I can see when people have their microphone on, which is very helpful. All right. Any amendments, changes, discussions, any things that are incorrect? I know you're all diligent minute readers, so. Oh. All right. I'm just looking at my question box. Jill Nelson says here. So that must have referred to the attendance. All right, no corrections, no changes. Then I guess I would call for the vote. Anybody that's opposed to or abstaining from this vote? We're all good. Okay, so this motion has been unanimously approved, and the minutes have been approved from last time. All right, so I guess I'm next then. So I've got a short president's report that I wanted to cover. Let me put the slides are up here. All right, so back in June, we had a leadership session, and we covered basically what we've done for the last fiscal year. So we covered that this year, kind of in this last leadership session. But what I wanted to do this presentation is update you primarily on what we've done since the leadership session, because that was a thorough update. If you didn't see the leadership session, the slides are still online, I believe, and there's some great presentations on there, presentations from Sheila Croxton, Richard LeBlanc, some of our other presenters. So thank you very much for that. We've set some solid ground since the last meeting. And the next steps, we've been following the strategic plan and leadership by example. And so basically, of course, the new board will have to continue along. And what I want to do is not talk about the future. That Jackie will talk about that in her part of the presentation, but more where we've come in the last 3 months and where we're going. The first part, I want to talk about the board. And it's been truly a hard-working board. I'm just overwhelmed. I counted about 20 board meetings that we had in total this year. It was overwhelming, and they brought their passion to the table and their intelligence, their knowledge, and hard work. And I really appreciate that. The attendance was also stellar. I would say that our attendance was I don't have a hard and fast number, but I would say it's 90-95% attendance. Everybody made the effort to attend. I think we suffered a bit from the short-term nature of the board. The average was about 1.6 years on the board at the beginning of the year, but that isn't much different than we've had the last 2 years. So we've had to do a lot of training and bring people up to speed, but I think it's worked. Hopefully, worked well. One of the comments I heard when I became president was, we don't see the board except at the AGMs. And I hope that we've changed that with our bi-monthly meetings, with our thorough presentations. There's no reason why we can't be more transparent. And I think we've also been involved with committees, and like I say, it's a truly hardworking board. And we've been front and center when it's been needed. We've also had Richard LeBlanc as a mentor for the board, and in terms of his what Richard LeBlanc calls it integrity and commitment, and I think our board has exemplified that. I want to just say a few words about Guy Cote. I don't usually talk about our board members because I know there's an election going on, so I don't want to skew the election. I work really hard not to talk about individual board members at this meeting, but I do want to say thanks to Guy. He's not running for re-election. He's had a lot of other personal commitments, and as you heard of, one of his mother is ill, and he decided not to rerun. He's also written a great book, which I appreciate. I've started reading it. He's been 2 years on the national board, and prior to that with Synchro Quebec and other Synchro commitments. And he has an interest in continuing. He always spoke from his heart and his head, and it's been really great to have him on the board. He will receive a Synchro Canada pin as a token of our thank you. And if you have a moment, I would suggest, if you're so inclined, give Guy a personal email or note. I know he'll probably appreciate it. A bit about me. Jackie in the June leadership session called me durable and quiet. So I'm not exactly sure what that meant, but durable was like long-lasting, never-ending. But really, it's been fun, and I think durable also means we're riding the ups and the downs. I've done that deliberately. There were times when I went like, "Wow, this is going to be hard," but I hope that I've been supportive of the organization and the group, and we really try to steer the work on the board to everybody's best advantage. Quiet, I don't think that's necessarily true. I think everybody's received personal rants of mine by email or in person. So, but overall, I think hopefully we've set a tone to being very respectful. My plan is not to be involved with Synchro afterwards. After today, there's always a question: what's the president going to do? They seem to always want to continue or to there's a question: what's my ongoing involvement? And I think I've done what I've could in terms of the last 8 years. I'm a big believer in board turnover and term limits. So the way the bylaws are written, the president, the next president must ask for me to attend, and I must accept. And so far, I plan not to accept too many invitations to attend. I think the new board will be very capable as it is. That's it. I know that there's a German philosopher. His name is Hermann Hesse, and Angela Merkel quotes him a lot. She says, "In all beginnings dwells a magic force." And I think definitely there's a new beginning there. I'm really excited about the new board, the candidates that have been put forward. I also want to thank the past presidents. Louise Kennedy's on the call, Lisa Schott, Mario Welsh, for setting a great tone for us on the board. So that's it on the board. In terms of the PSOs and TSOs, the territorial sporting organizations, Yukon, you get your own list there. I've come to the conclusion that part of our role as a national board is to work with the PSOs. I've learned that the COC does that in terms of trying to develop the NSOs, and I think our board needs to do that. I've learned to appreciate the struggles that each one of you have and the strengths that each province brings. Each one of you that's on the call, I've truly enjoyed the contribution that you've made, and I think we need to honor that. As Julie Healy said earlier on, we compete with each other, but on the other hand, we need to make sure that we respect each other well, and so that's good. We need to, I think our values will bring us forward, and that those values are athletes-focused, coach-driven. I think we all feel we exemplify that. Devotion to excellence, teamwork and collaboration, and ethics and respect. In my just going back to the earlier comment, if you look at my slide, I've got 11 presidents mentioned, and just to show you the turnover at the PSO level is equally as high as it on the national board. There are 5 returning presidents from the last annual meeting and 6 new presidents from the last annual meeting. So that's within the last year. So again, we need to work together to communicate well. Part of our process is just learning to work together and communicate and bring people up to speed. One thing I've really enjoyed most of all is during our bi-monthly provincial updates, I've really enjoyed listening to your successes and also the challenges and sharing those. I think that's been one of my highlights. All right, so next slide. I've only got these next slides will go fairly quickly. I just wanted to acknowledge the people first of all. One of the things that happened to me a lot is people would come up to me and say, "Henry, the worst thing that Synchro Canada ever did was become a governance board." I'm going like, what do you mean? And they go like, well, the governance board, you guys don't focus on the important stuff. And I go like, what do you mean? Well, you don't care about performance. You don't care about results. All you care about is policies. And that would just drive me nuts. So you know, this is from the Institute of Governance, which deals with non-for-profits in Canada. And this is a slide they put up saying these are the 5 things that a good governance board does. And it's not dissimilar to what Richard has talked about, except that Richard has maybe in a different way, Richard LeBlanc. So the 5 areas I always look at are legitimacy and voice, make sure that there's an opportunity for people to participate, which is why we have a bigger annual meeting than ever before. And as Julie Healy said, consensus orientation, we need the feedback, and sometimes people don't get it. I think one of my last emails from Jackie was, people don't respond. So, you know, I think there is a willingness to have people listen. Or people contribute and us to listen. Direction, we've talked about the strategic vision a lot, but it's not just the direction, it's an understanding and appreciation of our history, our culture, our complexities, and I think we need that as well. Performance, I think a good board does look at performance. They look at both how responsive we are as well as the effectiveness and efficiency of the organization, and we'll talk about those later on. Accountability, we've I think demonstrated higher transparency than ever before, and we continue to work on that. What I've learned about this is no matter how well you think you're doing, there's always another next bar to cross. So I think we've tried our best there. And equity and fairness in terms of things such as respect in sport, responsible coaching movement, the policy framework. Those are all things that we're doing there. So what I wanted to do is on some of these slides next is to go through these areas one by one and talk about them. So legitimacy and voice, what have we done in the last 3 months that have tried to help that to grow the voice and legitimacy of all our stakeholders? So we've continued with the Richard LeBlanc's guidance and governance. The nominations, I think, based on both Benoit Girardin, who's been on our nomination committee, and Richard LeBlanc, we've got a greater depth of candidates than ever before and more interest than ever before. We've extended the use of GoToWebinar in this session here. We introduced a 24/7 respect resource line for the athletes, coaches, and anybody that's taken the activity leader program. So that, again, so our stakeholders have a chance then to say, what do I do? Where do I go? We've continued with our information and communication sessions with the August PSO meeting, several ED calls. We've done the workshops at this meeting, and then we've had numerous surveys with the different participants. In terms of the next one, which is direction, we need to change the slide. We've gone to a strategic plan continues. The new, as Richard said at the end, actually we talked about it even last September, the idea of having metrics and looking what are achievable goals. How do we measure what we're doing? That's the important thing. As Jackie alluded to earlier, we will be releasing a bunch of metrics, but as well as some high-level highlights there. The high performance strategy rollout continues. We've got a revised RTC model that we will, with Ontario, that we hope to continue to grow. And other direction we've helped with Lisa Schott. She's the new technical athletic swimming chair. And so that has huge implications for us in terms of direction and success as an organization. She now controls a lot of the strings with the World Series, the Olympic selection process, the Olympic participation, and other judging technical issues. So having somebody from our own backyard involved that we work closely with is super important. And I can't tell you how important that is. I know she was at the FINA office not too long ago talking. Last week, I believe, talking about the Olympic selection criteria and the Olympic program, and gets our feedback primarily on that. So very important movement forward. In terms of performance, the next slide, things that we've done in the last 3 months. I don't have my slide up. I'm waiting. Can somebody just flip the slide? There we go. In terms of performance, which is responsiveness, effectiveness, and efficiency, we will have a new course, as Wayne mentioned. Events, in terms of performance, we've submitted expressions of interest for 2 FINA events in 2018. One was the World Juniors and one was the rehosting of the World Series. We didn't get the World Juniors, but there was a learning experience and we know what to do for 2020, I think. And the World Series, we will probably get that. We've put the expression of interest in, and it's a low-cost item for us, consistent to the previous year. We strengthened our OTP relationship and we achieved new funding, so we're very excited about that. We sent a bunch of people to Budapest, the senior team, the masters people, the Komen Cup and the junior camps, of course, were there. We participated in the FINA Aquatics Day, and then we had the international presence through Sheila Croxon, was newly nominated to the FINA Coaching Committee, and also Margot Montjoy continues her work with the IOC and FINA. She's Canada's board member at FINA, and she's also working with the IOC on released a new course just recently. And then another thing in terms of performance that I'm excited about personally is we have 26 CanSwim Synchro pilot programs with Plan 42 progress as well. Plan 42 is the new judging evaluation system. The 26 Synchro pilots, I thought we'd have success with 20, so 26 is exciting. It's an important grassroots thing for us. In terms of actually, one more thing about performance, when I looked at the MD&A, management discussion analysis, I noticed that there were only 8 provinces of our 11 PTSOs that had a decline in membership in the last year. So that came as a shock to me. And the highlights, the ones that were increasing were primarily BC and Ontario at 12% and Alberta with 2%. So I think there's a problem in the system. If 8 of our provinces are decreasing in membership, then that's an area. So I think CanSwim Synchro has a great future for us there and an important building block. What I did notice, though, if you look at the 5-year trend, the overall growth has been 5.1% compounded over the 5 years. So it's not all bad news, and the growth was led by, if I recall, the Western provinces, BC, Alberta, and Saskatchewan have done a great job there. So again, in terms of performance of Synchro in Canada, interesting numbers. Accountability, I think we just talked about that a bit more work around that. Let's go to the next slide. And then fairness. One of the things that we've done in the last 3 months, of course, is the FINA rule changes. And I want to thank Jackie for that, because in the past, we've just implemented the FINA rule changes without thinking how is it relevant or appropriate or applicable in terms of Canada and what works for us. And in fact, that's what brought me into the board in the first place, was make sure that we had appropriate policies and rules and participation. Ruth has talked about the overhaul of the conduct policies, the privacy policy, and then the respect and sport training. And I want to mention here again the resource line, because that again has to do with fairness in terms of giving us the best results at the lowest cost. So that is basically that part of the slide. The next slide. We just continue there. This is a slide I put up exactly like it did last year at the annual meeting in terms of where we're going and in terms of the future. We're well on our path. I think we've now released the metrics and we're moving forward to being able to evaluate them. And we do have a good business plan that we're following that's in line with that. So with that, I guess I just wanted to say thank you. A couple of thank yous. First of all, for everybody that's on the call, you guys are amazing. There's the PSO boards and the leaders on the PSO level, the volunteers on the pool deck, officials. I always have a special mention of them, because we're judge sport, and without great officials, we're nothing. So the dedication and devotion by officials is truly important for the sport, and we appreciate that. Other important people of COC, OTP, Sports Canada, they've been really supportive and are first class. Coaches have been amazing in terms of the dedication and hard work, and always willing to work hard and improve things. And of course, finally, being in the pool and seeing the athletes has been great. So my final thank you slide is a thank you to all of you. Thanks for putting up with me. It's been like a great honor to work with all of you. I personally feel we've come a long way, and I'm excited about the upcoming Synchro Canada board. I know you'll have a great board moving forward, and I think Synchro Canada is in a great place to achieve great things. So that's my presentation. I guess, Jackie, you've got the next part of this presentation.
Okay, can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay, just let me get my slides organized here. Okay, so thank you, Henry, very much, and thank you all to all of you for giving me just a few minutes to do a brief update. I, like Henry, wanted to share a little bit of what's happened and a little bit about what's coming. So I'll go through this reasonably quickly, and then we did leave a chance at the end of both of our reports for questions if anybody wanted to double back and ask a question. So for those of you that were around in 2014, at the annual meeting, I did a very brief workshop presentation where I presented this Synchro Canada plan or path, and we talked a little bit about the kinds of things that were important to growth in the organization and to moving forward. And so I just thought it would be maybe interesting to flip back to it and do a little bit of a touch base on some of the areas that at that point we had identified that we wanted to work on. So in the 2014 timeframe, of course, I was brand new and we were in a different place in the organization for sure. We had identified athlete development as a priority, exposure of the sport and exposure of our athletes. Government and sport partners is another area that we had identified. We wanted to move forward with events, and certainly we had some discussions around the use of technology. So in the sense of this path to excellence, at the time we talked about the fact that results drives growth in the sport. And so, I mean, we're still very much in this same situation. Results drives ratings, ratings drives relationships, relationships drive revenues, and that allows us to reinvest in getting more results. So it is a giant wheel. We have not had the results that we were hoping we would have when we first presented this in 2014, but I think we've made some progress in other areas, chipping away at things. So I did want to talk a little bit about that. First of all, we invested in developing a computerized judging system. Certainly at the first national championships that I attended in 2014 when I started, the judges were using paper and pencil chit system for putting their marks in, and we were weighting one whole performance before we had the scores of the previous one. So from a presentation of an event perspective for potential for video streaming or one-day television, certainly it was a little bit confusing for people who were spectating the event to figure out what was happening. So that was something that was identified as a priority, and that approach to technology and computerizing and using the available technology as much as we can is something that we have definitely made a priority on a go forward as well. Likewise, with the new live stream coverage, at the time in 2014, we were using a one camera system. It was an old video camera that we had borrowed from somebody, and so you know our live stream coverage was was pretty low tech. And, you know, certainly the little bit of investment that we've made in live stream has paid great dividends in terms of the kinds of viewership that we now have of our sport and our events online. So we average around 25,000 views for each one of our national championships, sometimes more, and up to about 75 countries tune in to our live stream coverage that we're presenting now. So, I mean, in terms of creating exposure, and the potential for more exposure and sponsorship interest in all those things, this was and still is an important part of our way forward. I'll come back to this in a little bit. So also in 2014, we did our first OTP presentation at that point, and so I've put up a slide from that OTP presentation just to give you a sense of some of the things that we identified in 2014 and a little bit of the progress that we've made since then in terms of accomplishing some of them. In that presentation, we certainly identified that you know, it all comes back to defining athlete progress and trying to define what it takes for an athlete to be on track in the gold medal profile or on the podium pathway, which are terms that we've come to understand in the sport that we're constantly by our governments being evaluated on. So we identified that our scoring system, in 2014 and still, because of the nature of the scoring system, it doesn't allow for a lot of that sort of objective measurement or the definition of difficulty or the defining of how an athlete knows that they're on track for potential Olympic podium performance. So very much started down that path. As you can see on the left-hand side here, Plan 42 grew out of that objective, which was to implement a scoring system in Canada first that used the principles of segmenting the assessment process into more manageable chunks so that athletes in particular got better information about their performances, more specific information about their performances. So, we're still working on this, at the international end. We did make a goal to coming at it from both sides, and we certainly are in that. There has been some work done, and I would share with you that when I was at the Worldwide Seminar at the end of the World Championships in Budapest, there was some very exciting conversations going on amongst the countries who are all now coming to the same realization that we need to have a way of better defining difficulty in particular in our sport, and in different ways of quantifying performance that make better use of the kinds of technology and things that are available and some of the best practices of other judged sports. Something else we identified in 2014 that we really needed in order to improve our lot in life as a sport was we needed a World Series, a Grand Prix series or a World Series of events that would allow us to have the access to international competition on its own, not having to go to other people's national championships. So, of course, this year for the first time we achieved the implementation of the World Series, and as Henry said, we're hopeful that going into year 2 we will also have a World Series event, and this will become a fixture in Synchro Canada's event repertoire and one day be bigger and better and operate as a standalone function in our event calendar. We also talked in 2014 about the Olympics, and I think at that point we anticipated that the way the Olympic selection criteria had been delivered and our situation at that point not being being in the Americas, which meant that the automatic spot for the Americas was going to the host, Brazil, in 2016. We certainly talked to OTP about the fact that we needed to see what we could do to change the qualification system for the next games, because it was too late in the process to do anything for 2016, but certainly for 2020, 8 teams in the Olympic Games, particularly how they were selected, was not representative of our sport, and particularly given how appealing and televisable it is and how much interest there is. We needed to have a different selection system that allowed for more teams in particular. So as Henry mentioned, work is happening in the background, looking forward to potentially having 10 teams and 22 duets in the 2020 games. This is obviously just something that's in discussion at the moment. There's no decision been made, but just to show you a little bit of the progress that's been made since the time we first started talking about it, it is still on the table. We also talked at that point, as I mentioned, about our National Talent Identification Program and the challenges that we had as an organization as a whole, and even as a sum of its parts, in that we need to be able to more consistently measure and quantify athlete skill from the very beginning levels up to the very top levels. Because with the inability to do that, it makes it really hard for us to define, which athletes are in fact on track in the gold medal profile for potential, world or Olympic championship level. And we still have some work to go in that, although we are making some headway, and I know Julie has shared some information about some of the things that we're doing internally to try to be able to do that. Also in 2014, we talked a little bit about the concept of regional training centers and the idea of bridging the gap between clubs and the national center with something that provided a daily training environment, and you'll see that acronym used quite often from here forward in terms of what our expectations and obligations are as a sport relative to funding and relative to creating the best possible national team program. So those discussions were very preliminary, and of course it was a year and a bit before we realized our first regional training center, which was the regional training center in Ontario. And we've committed to establishing more regional training centers. The purpose of them has changed a little bit, but the idea being that we need to spread the concept of daily training environment and the access to some of those important sports scientists across the country. And we also talked about our competition structure, both from the judging system being more supportive of long-term athlete development, which related back to our work on Plan 42 as it evolved, but also in terms of making sure that domestically we've got the best competition structure for athlete progress, and that we're not losing athletes potentially with talent along the way. So that's still something that's on our list at the moment, but we have been talking about it and thinking about it since 2014. In 2015, we got busy and started measuring. We measured everything. So at the World Championships in 2015, we had our sports science team at home receiving videos daily, and they were, by whatever means that's, scientifically proven as possible at the time, they could try to define their performances in ways that were different perhaps than just the scoring that was coming through from the judges at that point. So, you can see that this is just an example of some of the data capture, and, there's all kinds of issues with this, but it was a first attempt, and I think the idea is that, moving forward in our sport, we need to be able to quantify things more. So height, speed, duration of figures, pool coverage, what kind of formations the figures are being executed in, how many errors are being committed, those kinds of things need to be calculated and in a more specific way. And difficulty needed to be defined. And so we started work on that, particularly in the area of highlight moves or acrobatic moves. And that is work that you'll see in the next year or so is really starting to blossom at the FINA level. So they've made a commitment to do some specific definitions around acrobatic moves, with the idea that they need to be better quantified for the performances and in terms of giving athletes credit for what they're doing. And we talked about, in 2015, trying to find a way to come up with specific deductions for errors. And you can see here we've played around with the idea that a small error would be a minus 0.1 and medium minus 0.3, etc. And interestingly, and Canada certainly was one of the countries that put forward rule amendments about figure deductions, and this was something that that FINA has actually passed at its Congress. So, it's a start. I think we started with figures; they're a little bit easier and more quantifiable, perhaps. But the concept is that is thinking that we'll keep going. And from the start of technology, we got a little bit crazy about technology, and we're using all kinds of things now, or we have built tools that we could use. To help us with the counting and the measuring and the timing, and trying to use technology to assist the human process of evaluation as much as we can. And, all of this kind of work has been an attempt to try to get ourselves into, a closer definition of what sport is. And, in the sense of the Olympic definition, sport is a pursuit of human athletic perfection, so the Olympic motto is faster, higher, stronger. And I'll just share a quick anecdote. When I first started, or when I had just joined Synchro Canada, I watched the 2012 Olympic Games on television because I wanted to see what that level of the sport looked like. And I listened to the commentators at the time, and I've told this story, so some of you may have heard, but the most quantifiable comment that the commentator in the Olympics made about the Russian champions was the word sparkly. So at that point, I thought to myself that, in a sport that is as incredibly physically difficult and, and demanding in terms of training and performance, that we need to be able to provide our commentators with something better than sparkly to be able to define an Olympic champion who is clearly of the ability level that the team from Russia is. So sport is quantifiable, and outcomes must be clearly measurable and transparent to athletes, coaches, and spectators. I think this is really what we need to focus on in terms of moving our sport forward. If we want to achieve all the kinds of things that we want to, then one of our metrics is going to be how much interest there is from outside people in our sport. Sport must be based on and clearly demonstrate the principles of fair play, goes without saying. Most importantly, athletes need to be absolutely clear what they have to do to win. And for us, particularly in Canada, sport needs to retain the element of fun at every level. We know that that is what keeps our athletes motivated and participating. So as much as we need to be serious-minded about moving the sport forward, we also need to keep it fun. So back to our path to excellence, you can see the priorities that we set again at that point. We talked about ticket sales, and we talked about government partners, and we talked about events, and highlighted that those were areas that we needed to do some really early focus on. So how did we manage to get as far as we have? Because we certainly have made some progress. First of all, we needed to make our events more profitable. We can't be losing money on the hosting of our national events, because in many sports, events is how they tip the scale in favor of their revenue diversity. So certainly that's an area for us that needed to be that we needed to pay attention to. We've worked very hard with our government partners, recognizing the sponsorship market is really a tough one right now. We've gone after every dollar that we knew existed in government discretionary funding since 2014. So at this point, we've recruited just under $500,000 in discretionary government funding. So that's above and beyond the money that we get from Sport Canada as part of our core contribution, and it's on top of the money that we have gotten from OTP. So that's just about hard work and finding out where the dollars are available, and we've had some good luck in that. Organizations like the Canadian Olympic Committee have come to the table with money at a time when sports were desperately in need. Media, I think we know that media is part of the key to our future, and we've certainly expanded our use of social media, and we're now into the discussion of creating athlete brands. And I mean, some of our athletes are helping us a lot in this regard, that people get to recognize them as being synonymous with the sport. And because our athletes are incredible ambassadors, they're all amazing individuals. I mean, this is a no-brainer for us. We just need to give them the opportunity and help them as we can. And we've also worked on our membership, and we've worked on membership in terms of numbers, and we've worked on membership in terms of looking ahead to what kinds of things we can do as an organization to help our members, which are the provincial sport organizations, and also for provincial sport organizations to help clubs, and for clubs to help participants, because that's ultimately our goal, is to recruit more participants into the system. So thinking through and developing programs around this area have been important focuses for us. So future from the ground floor as opposed to the 10,000 feet up. We have now a strategic plan that lays our path forward. So our next step is to confirm the metrics that we're going to measure our successes with, and we've done a draft of those metrics. The board has seen it once. It is next step coming out to the members to have a look and to make sure that they are reflective, that they respect the responsibilities matrix that we have developed together in terms of who's responsible for which pieces, and that that it's something that we can agree as a group and move forward with. In terms of science, we need to continue to embrace, define, measure, and use technology. As a sport, we are a little behind the rest of the sports in terms of our use of science and our understanding of how the use of science can help our athletes improve. We need to deal with figures. We need to anticipate the outcome, and we need to be prepared. I've lived through this already once in my past, and I can honestly tell you that now that we've taken figures out of junior worlds, it won't be far before figures disappear from the sport almost altogether. So we need to figure out what we're going to do in place of figures, and we need to look at all of our revenue models in a no-figure environment, so that if it does happen, and when it does happen, we're prepared as an organization, and we know what we're going to do. Boys, we need to let them in. We were actually one of the countries that did quite a bit of promotion of the whole concept of the mixed duet when it started way back in 2015. And now it's up to us domestically to find a way to let them join our clubs in particular, because there is a whole avenue of sport development here that we're just on the very beginning of. But you can imagine if we can open up our programs and let boys in, we can really have an impact on our membership recruitment, because there's a whole part of the population that we haven't been touching at all. And I would say a small word about inclusivity at this point. Us taking our programs, and Can Swim Synchro will be a good example of this, and you know, ensuring that they are inclusive, that they have a place and an application for children from other countries that may not have the same approach to getting in the swimming pool that we do here in Canada. And we need to embrace the name change to artistic swimming. We have a lot of things on the horizon in the sport and in our organization that we want to do to move forward. And a name change gives us a platform to create a new reality. So we need to take advantage of it and use the opportunity that we have to reintroduce ourselves and our sport to the general public. Can Swim Synchro, I mentioned, it equals fun in the water, and it has to be approached from that perspective. It's a way to provide programming to communities that you know, might be a little bit different than the Learn to Swim that's currently available. And we need to you know, have this consistent approach to teaching skill progressions, because it is it's the key to our future growth. Together we will make this happen, because it is something that will touch all areas of the organization. Julie talked a little bit about professional conduct, and I think we've spent a lot of time on the whole area of bad behavior. And I think as an organization, we've now demonstrated clearly that it's not going to be tolerated anymore. That for all of us in all parts of the organization, professional conduct is something that's going to elevate us above, you know, above the crowd, and make our sport a more appealing and a more attractive place to be. Simplify and standardize things from coast to coast in terms of things like coach training, officials training, athlete programming, and selection criteria. We really need to make sure that we are doing things in a standardized way so that we're all benefiting from the learning and that there's consistency in the evolution. I thought I'd share with you quickly our OTP message, because Julie and I participated in the standard fall OTP orientation meeting this week. And interestingly, these are some of the comments that they made. Getting an Olympic medal is really, really hard. Yes, it is. And, you know, their view is there's no such thing as luck. So from the perspective of and particularly in a judge sport, we know that, you know, luck doesn't really play a part in this. We need to make sure that we have all of our wheels turning in the same direction to be able to do that. Year 2, which we're in now of the quad, is meant to solidify the culture of excellence. And fortunately, this is one of our values, so we're consistent in this regard. And how OTP measures us, because clearly we all play a part in how OTP measures us. And so they look at, first and foremost, world-class technical leadership and world-class coaching. That's their primary benchmark. They want to see a high-performance plan that's driven by system and individual gap analysis and mitigation strategies, so that we understand where our athlete weaknesses are and that we have plans in place to address those, both on the individual athlete level for those at the very top, but also in the system. If we've got swimmers who can't do flat splits, we need to figure out how to make them do flat splits. They're looking for effective alignment of high performance planning from the NSO to the PSO to the club. So obviously the work that Julie's doing in particular, and the work that's been done over the summer with Sheila's plan and so forth, is critical in this regard. World-class training, world-class daily training environment and competition structures. So again, all on our to-do list. Evidence-based athlete identification and development system driven by the podium pathway is something that they're measuring us against. World-class integrated support team delivering sport science services to targeted athletes. Again, a pitch for the regional training center concept, that we have the ability then to bring athlete services to athletes across the country without them necessarily needing to be centralized all the time. And they're looking for an organizational commitment and capacity to implement a high-performance plan and to allocate the discretionary funding required to achieve it. So the good news is that OTP measurement is consistent with our plan and objectives. So that says something about the synergy of sport. So that's a good news story. I think for us as a takeaway moving forward, our key next steps will involve us aligning, working together, and sharing as much as possible. So our bottom line then is we need to think like an Olympic sport, we need to honor our values, and then we need to humanize it and keep it as real as possible. Okay.
Good. Thank you, Jackie. That was an excellent overview. We do have one question right now, and that was from Ontario. said, Henry mentioned that the strategic plan metrics have been set, and so did you mention that, Jackie. When will these be shared with the PSOs?
Very soon. We're just in the process of finalizing the format. The board has had an opportunity to look at them in actually 3 different formats. So we're putting together the last go-round of edits to the presentation format. We're trying to find the best way to make them the most clear for people. So I would say a week or 2, and they should be to the strategic planning committee, which was our first stop. And from the strategic planning committee, once they've had a chance to go through it and massage them a little bit, they'll come out to the members.
Yeah. I want to share with the members a little bit about the difficulty of putting them together, because it's one thing for us to say we're going to put together a strategic plan or a metrics for Synchro Canada per se, like our NSO, and say we're going to have 5 coaches or 3 staff. Those are things that are directly within our control. But if we want to have a Synchro and Canada plan that we all work together, then it does take a lot of coordination, and it's going to take some buy-in from everybody and hard work to agree to things. So if we set a growth rate of say 7% per year for membership, some people won't be able to achieve it, others will, and it's going to be the combination of all of us that make it happen. So I think that's the scary part that Jackie's been facing is how do we make sure that there's buy-in at each level for each respective ability. Like, not everybody has the ability to grow 7%, but some, as we've seen, have grown 12%. So how do you get that balance? So there's some difficulty there. And I don't see any more questions. So I think that's it then. And no hands raised. I didn't cut off Natalie. All right. So with that, I guess I would just call on a motion. So the motion would be that the President and CEO reports be received as presented. Could I have somebody to move that?
Kathleen.
Thanks, Kathleen. A seconder?
Desiree.
Thanks. Any other questions, comments, anything to discuss? Or do I have anybody opposed or abstaining from that vote? Wait a few seconds.
Henry, this is Pam.
Yes.
I have one comment about the reports, and it's that going forward, it would be really helpful for us if all the stakeholders that would be present at the AGM could have the same deadlines, so that distribution, so that committee and staff reports have the same deadlines as provincial presidents' reports. So we have a chance to share these with our boards in case they may have comments or questions.
That's good. You've always been mentioned those kind of things about having enough time to review those. So that's noted. Thank you very much. I guess you can work out what that time frame would be. But thank you very much for that comment. Any other questions, comments? And I guess since we're in the middle of a vote, no opposed, no abstentions? Thank you. That's passed then. The next item on the agenda is the approval of the audited financial statements. Since we've already had a 1-hour session on reviewing the financial statements in depth with a fantastic presentation on the financial workshop, I guess I would ask if there's any final questions regarding the audited financial statements. Anything else that you want to talk about? Okay, I don't see any microphones. I don't see any hands. I don't see any questions. Okay, let's get somebody to. I would request a motion then, I guess, that the March 31st, 2017 annual financial statements be approved as presented. Kathleen? Thank you, Kathleen. And Desiree. It's the 1-2 punch, which is great, though. I appreciate that. Keeps the meeting moving along. Let's take the vote. Opposed or abstaining? Wait a few seconds. No comments, no mics. We're good. All right. Next item on the agenda, appointment of the auditors. I would call on the following motion, a motion that the auditing firm of KPMG be retained for the fiscal year 2017-2018. Can I have somebody move that, please?
I'll move it. Helen Kelly.
Move that, Jill.
So I'll say Helen, I heard you first, so you can move it, and Jill will second it. I just want to make a quick comment on that, is that they, as we said, their fees have not gone up very much in the last couple of years, and they seem to do a good job, and I think the staff have been pleased with their work. We've had the same, I guess, manager that was on the AGM last year for about 4 or 5 years now. She does a lot of other sports, so seems to be good value for the money. And so I would just say a few words about that. Any other comments, questions, discussion on that topic? Okay, I'll take the vote. Anybody opposed or abstaining from appointing KPMG as auditors? We're good. All right, thank you. Next item on the agenda is receiving of the standing committee reports. I would call for a motion to receive the standing committee reports as circulated. For clarity, the nominating committee report was sent separately within the time frame of our nomination committee terms of reference, and the finance committee report came in multiple parts from the financial statements of the MD&A, and then we sent separately the HR committee and Risk Management Committee, those are the 4 standing committees. So could I have a motion that the reports of the standing committees be received?
Desiree.
Yay, Desiree. No microphones. Pam, thanks. All right. Anybody, any other discussion? Opposed, abstaining? Let's take the vote then. Anybody opposed or abstaining to this motion? Wait a few seconds. We're good to go. All right. Next item on the agenda, receiving the provincial reports. I would call on the following motion, that the provincial territorial reports be received as presented.
Kathleen.
Thanks, Kathleen. Desiree, thank you. It's been great.
How can you tell I have a 2 o'clock meeting?
Trying to get out of here. Any other comments on those? My comment on it, guys, we did a new format that tried to align with the roles and responsibilities that was put out earlier this year, which I found the report very helpful. I loved Kathleen's report. She started with about 40 items under operational excellence, and she got down to lobbying. She goes, "NA, I'm so done with this report." But I really read them all, and I loved them all, and I really appreciate you sharing your successes and challenges with us and your activities. It's been great. And no other discussion or comments? No. Oh, I can't unmute my mic. Natalie's here. All right, let's have a look here. Natalie, what does this say here? Attendee self-muted and is muted by the organizer. Sorry, there you go, Natalie. You should be able to talk now. You're self-muted, so if when you unmute your mic, you'll be able to speak. And that's the question. All right. So let's take the vote. Anybody opposed to or abstaining from the the territory and provincial reports? We're good. All right. Next item on the agenda, there's no bylaw changes. Ratification of prior acts of directors and officers. I would call in a motion that says that all acts of the directors and officers of Synchro Canada in 2016-17 be ratified.
Desiree.
Thanks, Desiree. Seconder?
Jill.
Thank you, Jill.
I'll second.
Thank you. Any other comments? Discussions? All right, let's take the vote. Opposed to or abstaining? All right, I think that's been passed. Thank you very much. All right, so I have one concern, and that's that when this, and I think Jackie, just so you're aware, when this thing was booked, it was booked for 3.5 hours. So my little timer says that we have 10 minutes and 48 minutes left. We're not going to get finished in that time frame. I hope we don't get all cut off. If we get cut off, just check your emails to make sure that we're not, to get how to rejoin. But I think there should be. Hopefully, it doesn't cut off by itself. So Jackie, I've already called Lisa Pagliaro, and hopefully that's under control. So the next part is the election, which is very exciting. So you're still stuck with me. I was the chair of the nomination committee, and so now I will put on my nomination committee hat and go forward in that vein. So I'll turn on my camera just to let you see me. There you go. Hello, guys, everybody. So what I would encourage people to do is to, if you want to, if for the candidates that are on, if they want to use their cameras, feel free. The microphones, you're set as a presenter, so you can do that. You can unmute yourself as you go forward. So that is basically the camera and the arrangement there. The nominated committee report, it was sent out on September 1st. Thanks to the committee members. They were a great group of people. It was Marc Lebel, president of Synchro Quebec, Chris Hampshire, who is past president now of Synchro Alberta, Shelby Harding, and then Benoit Girardin. Shelby's done it 3 or 4 years, I think 3 years. And a new addition was Benoit Girardin, who works for 40 sports across the country. He was in Budapest watching Synchro while we were there, and I met him afterwards for a coffee where I beat on him for 2 hours about getting good candidates to our election. So we've got a great selection of candidates. I'm very excited, but thanks to the committee members for your hard work all summer long. It's been a great experience working with both the committee members and the candidates. I've enjoyed talking to all the candidates, and they have a lot to offer. So a word about the process. We're doing things hopefully with the best practices in mind of what the COC and Richard LeBlanc and the terms of reference that we've established. We received I think 10 formal applications for the board, of which as we went through them, we broke them down into 3 categories: recommended, qualified, and unqualified. So the recommended were the candidates that we thought were as a committee, we thought were the stronger overall package. The qualified candidates are eminently qualified. They're good people. They would be good additions of the board. Just as a general sense, we felt that the recommended candidates were better for their overall package, what they have to offer. There was one candidate that might have become unqualified, but he self-selected himself out after he started seeing the selection process and the kind of questions we were asking. In terms of what separated what we looked for in the candidates, we used Richard LeBlanc's book that we talked about at the leadership session quite a bit. And the 6 categories were strategic thinking, sports knowledge, oversight and leadership, skills and diversity, integrity and commitment, and then personal value creation to the board. And the questions that we posed the candidates during the interviews were totally in line with that, except for the last. And then the last question was the value creation, is the question that we've asked the candidates to talk about more specifically at the as one of their points to talk to later on today. We had, of the 10 that did apply, a number of them that we said would be qualified but not recommended, then decided to drop their nomination voluntarily. They were free to go forward, but they realized that if they weren't one of the stronger candidates or were competing against somebody else in the province, or for whatever reason, they dropped their candidacy, and we've encouraged them to go on to either a committee with Synchro Canada or consider us for next year. They were first class. I hear somebody talking. No. All right. That is it there. The elections will be conducted in accordance with the nominating committee terms of reference. We will name the 3 scrutineers. So the next part is the scrutineers. We have there are 3 scrutineers. They're selected by 3 different groups. The nominating committee selects a scrutineer, and we have chosen Shelby Harding because we know she can count. The scrutineer for the staff and CEO is Cheryl McAvoy, has kindly volunteered, and the scrutineer for the members is Jen Luzia from Alberta. So the way that will work for them, they will work with Stéphane Côté, who's running the voting system, and they will actually leave the session after the votes, after you've done your ballots, and then work together on an offline session using a different product to check the results of the vote. Basically, Stéphane will be sharing his screens with these scrutineers. There are 3 board positions available, as you saw in the nomination committee report. Typically, so 3 people will be elected for 2-year terms. A director may not serve more than 6 years in total, except in certain circumstances, the president. There are 6 persons seeking election to the board. These 6 candidates, I will mention them alphabetically, and they will do their speech alphabetically. Each candidate has been given 2.5 minutes to present to the members. So alphabetically, they are Lindsay Duncan, Judy Enns-Burdett, Alain Jalk, Julie Johnston, Rebecca Curry, and Gail McClelland. There are 2 candidates, as far as I know, that aren't, well, 2 that I know for sure aren't able to make it today, and those 2 are Alan Jalk and Julie Johnson. Both those candidates have given us text to read for 2.5 minutes. I think Jackie will be reading Alan's, and Chris Hampshire has Julie Johnson's text that she'll be reading for everybody. Just as I said in the nomination committee report, there is a geographic limitation where we can have only 2 elected directors per province. So that means in this election, based on provincial residency, only one of Judy Enns-Burdett or Gail McClelland can be elected, and only two of the 3 from Quebec, Lindsay Duncan, Alan Jalk, and Rebecca Curry, can be elected. But in total, 3 can be elected. Okay. Then there are provisions if there are, so each candidate must be elected by a majority of ballots. If we don't get the majority, then we can go to a second or third round of ballots just to ensure that you do want to get a majority in there. And there's provisions in the terms of reference to do that. There's also provisions in the terms of reference for dealing with ties. So that are the 2 reasons when we might go to second or third ballots. So the idea will be that our candidates, this started I guess 3 years ago, the candidates will be asked to leave the meeting, and then when they are, when it's their turn to speak, they will rejoin the meeting, and Jackie will send you an email saying, come back, and then you'll come back, and you'll give your presentation. And then at that point, you're free to join or you're free to leave the meeting entirely. Some candidates prefer not to stick around to hear the results of the vote. So, but certainly we ask the candidates to come back in the order that we've asked them for. So it's your choice to stay till the end of the meeting. I think that's all I needed to talk about. So the order of presentation is, as I mentioned again, Lindsay, Judy, Alain, Julie, Rebecca, and Gail. When the voting process has concluded, the head scrutineer will advise each nominee of their results by private email so that they can choose to rejoin the meeting at all at that point. The head scrutineer will give me the results. I will then announce, and that's going to be, the head scrutineer will be Shelby. She has my phone number and my text and everything, so we've got that. I will then announce the final results to the delegates, including the number of votes received by the 3 winning candidates. Again, announcing the number is new this year. That's it. Gives you the lay of the land. Are there any questions? I guess we still have Natalie's question. I'm not sure where to go for the voting. Can you direct us for that? So, Stefan or Lisa? Or Jackie?
Hi, Henry. Sorry, Stefan is going to do an overview of so the last minute instructions for all the voters. So I think we were going to listen to the presentations first, and then Stefan's going to go through the instructions while everybody has their link open in front of them so that they can sort of follow what he's saying.
Perfect. All right, let's do that then.
Muted.
All right. So, with that in mind, I guess can each candidate leave the room then, and we'll except for Lindsay, and we will start the presentations. Okay, just checking to see everybody's left. All right, Lindsay, I'll turn on your microphone and you're free to go. Hi, Lindsay.
Hi, you can hear me okay?
Yes, you're good.
So my 2.5 minutes starts now?
Well, I will. I've got a clock. So, oh, there's Lindsay. Hi, Lindsay. I'll turn on my camera here so you can see. I do have a for our panelists. We know there's my clock, and what I'll do, I'll turn it on as soon as you start speaking, and we will then I'll break, kind of at the end of the sentence near 2.5 minutes. So yeah, welcome, Lindsay.
Okay, thank you. So I want to start by thanking the nominating committee for giving me a chance over the last several weeks to consider the objectives and the ambitions of Synchro Canada and how I might contribute. I think the value that I can bring to Synchro Canada comes from the breadth of my experience in Synchro, having been a coach for almost 2 decades now, but as well as from my professional life as a researcher and a professor of kinesiology. As a coach, I've worked with athletes at all levels of our sport, and I've worked in clubs with a variety of histories, structures, and success stories. I've been a team coach within a club, a head coach, a coach of provincial team programs, and I'm currently working within a university system. And I think that working within all of these different contexts has given me a really deep understanding of the challenges that exist at all levels of our sport. So I really get what it's like to be a grassroots organization looking to grow, looking for exposure, maybe looking to send your athletes to a national level competition for the first time. I've seen what it means to be an athlete looking for a spot on a provincial team or a national team, relying on your support network of coaches and family members and pushing through years of rigorous training. As a kinesiologist, I have insight into the challenges of defining, developing, and implementing successful athlete development programs that make sure that our young athletes are trained right and that Canada can continue to be competitive amongst the most competitive countries internationally. My career as a researcher has equipped me with a skill set that I think would be valuable to Synchro Canada, particularly at this point in time. I have experience building evidence-based programs, systematically studying the effectiveness of those programs, and then lobbying to have those programs implemented broadly. The Synchro in Canada objectives of aligning our member organizations, building a strong feeder system, and establishing a world-class high-performance system are all objectives I am well placed to contribute to because of my experience analyzing and evaluating existing systems and finding the best ways to intervene to improve them. And then personally, consistent with the traditions of our sport, I would say that I truly am a team player and I can work independently, but I much prefer collaboration. And I think I'd bring a real collaborative spirit to the board.
Thanks. Thanks very much, Lindsay. That was great. And by the way, that was exactly 2 minutes and 30 seconds. You're very precise. So thank you, Lindsay. You're welcome to stay and listen to the rest of the speeches or leave as you may feel fit. So.
Okay. Thank you.
Cool. All right. Our next person that's available is Judy Ensburdett. I'm not sure if she's back. Let me have a look here. She's not back yet.
Unmuted.
I just sent her a note, Henry, so just give her a sec and I'm sure she'll rejoin right now.
While we're waiting, one of the things I forgot to mention is so Alan Jelk and Julie Johnson have both sent their speeches to us. Jackie will be reading a pre-prepared speech by Alain, and Chris Hampshire will be doing the prepared speech by Julie Johnson. So these are prepared speeches. So I didn't ask them to leave the room. They will not be speaking other than what's in the prepared speech. There's Judy. All right, so Judy had a question. I am on, but I am muted. All right. Unmute you. There you go.
There we go.
Hi, Judy. How are you?
Great. How are you? Thank you.
Good. Thank you for so what I forgot to mention earlier on. I have a timer here that's has 2 minutes and 30 seconds, and roughly around the 2 minute 30 second mark, I will cut you off if it goes beyond that time. So go ahead. Thank you very much.
Terrific. Thank you, Henry. Good afternoon to everyone who's on the call today, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak to you. I joined the board 2 years ago, and at the time, Synchro Canada was at the early stages of redefining its long-term strategy. Given my background as a swimmer and synchro coach, and my career in organizational development and talent management, I saw this as a great opportunity to add value to the sport I grew up in. Looking back on my experiences over the last 2 years, I am proud of the progress we have made towards reaching our longer-term goals. I want to highlight some of the areas where I have been directly involved in adding value. First, I actively participated in the strategic planning process. Second, I led the Synchro in Canada Steering Committee set up to kickstart the implementation of our plan. Third, I worked closely with our CEO as she restructured her team, specifically in the recruitment and selection of our Chief Sport Officer, our High Performance Consultant, and finally our Finance and Administration Manager. Fourth, I acted alongside Gail as one of the board liaisons to our High Performance Consultant during her contract with us. And finally, I acted as a resource for the selection of this year's national team coaches. Although a lot has been accomplished, I feel there is much to do, which is why I am seeking your support to be able to continue as a board member. Going forward, I would like to continue to play a leadership role in implementing our change mandate and building our national organization. Specifically, creating a culture that is more performance-driven and accountable for its results at all levels, a culture that is focused on respect, and a culture that is inclusive and sees more diversity. Ultimately, we all want to see the same thing, which is our athletes competing and winning on the world stage. And I hope that I have the privilege to continue as part of the board to help achieve this goal. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much, Judy. And that was well under the 2 minutes and 30 seconds, and appreciate your comments. You're welcome to stay on the call or leave as you see fit. Let's have a question here from Kathleen. Okay, we'll deal with that later. So the next one on the list is Alan Jelk. Alan has provided it to Jackie and me, but Jackie has offered to read it. So Jackie, just hang on for a sec. Let me reset my timer here.
Okay, can you hear me okay?
I can hear you, and as soon as you start your speech, I will start the timer.
Okay. Good afternoon, ladies, gentlemen. My name is Alain Tony Gel, and I am running for a board position. My sincere apologies for not being able to be with you, as I am currently undertaking an exam for my MBA. Alain is a multilingual chartered professional accountant, CPA. Alain has occupied several finance positions for various organizations. He obtained his CPA and is currently completing his MBA. Alain serves on several board of directors in various sectors, including organizations. Why Synchro needs Alain on the board? Let's talk about a passion that we all share, sports and volunteering. I have been coaching basketball for the past 10 years as a volunteer for the high school that I have graduated from years ago. I have never asked for reimbursement for any of the expenses in the past decade, nor have I accepted to take a salary from my high school. Giving without looking back is the only way of giving. Donating my time to causes that I strongly believe in. My motivation is looking at the trophies in the gym and remembering every moment of how much hard work it took to win them. Last year, my team went undefeated and have finished second in the entire province of Quebec. Words cannot describe how proud I am of every single team member. I'm gratified that volunteering as a coach has strengthened my leadership and mentoring skill. The building Canada's future athletes starts with our kids. Synchro is in urgent need of a chartered professional accountant on its national board to overview and monitor its financials. I can't stress enough how mandatory this is for the success of an organization. I had long and informed discussions with Henry on this topic. I would be honored to donate my time to assure proper financial management at the national board level after realizing how badly financial expertise skills were missing from the board. Let's change that together. With all of the crises we have heard in the news, many of those misconducts could have been prevented by an ethical volunteer CPA on board. Basic financial expertise on board will simply not be sufficient to ensure a sustainable success. Henry is a well-respected CPA himself, and his departure will leave a void if the members decides not to elect a financial expert. I need all of you to make this happen. None of us members would like to see a scandal on the front news that could have been prevented. Risk mitigation is key. We can all agree as athletes that prevention is better than healing. I am trusting every single one of you to make the right decision the same way I have trusted every single one of my players for the past decade to do the right thing. Thank you, Ellen.
Great. Okay, thank you, Jackie. And again, that was well within the time limit. All right, the next presenter is Julie Johnson is the next candidate, and the presenter will be Chris Hampshire. So let me reset the clock. And hi, Chris, are you there?
Am I
on? Right.
Yeah.
You are on. Yes, you are.
Okay.
We can hear you. We can hear you clearly too. So as soon as you start reading the speech, I will turn the clock on for 2 minutes and 30 seconds.
Okay. I'm speaking on behalf of Julie Johnson, and she thanks you for the opportunity to be considered as a board member for Synchro Canada and for allowing her to submit these comments rather than provide a live presentation as she's out of the country. The nomination process has been very complete and has provided me with a better understanding of Synchro Canada's vision and approach to governance. My work experience has given me insight into the world of amateur sport, and I have enjoyed observing the skillful art of synchronized swimming performed by beginners, acclaimed competitors, seasoned masters, and world and Olympic medalists. In response to the question of how I feel I can add value to Synchro Canada, I immediately looked to my strengths and skills in challenging assumptions and offering innovative ideas and a fresh perspective on strategy. I believe the introduction of new thinking and alternative strategies and approaches to problem solving can breathe new worth and energy into an organization. Communicating and building consensus while ensuring value creation for all stakeholders without diminishing or harming the value of one group to enhance another are best practices that I have relied on in my professional and volunteer work and will bring to the Synchro Canada board. I have a passion for celebrating successes and honoring the past. Synchro Canada athletes have won many Olympic and world medals over the years, and their passion for their sport continues. These athletes and their coaches are a valuable resource and can provide inspiration and motivation to aspiring athletes and to the many coaches and volunteers who are creating opportunities for excellence in performance. I would like to be involved in stimulating such activities. Creating better value for all Synchro Canada stakeholders is an achievable goal and one that I would be delighted to work towards. I would be honored to become a member of the board of Synchro Canada and continue to its success in becoming a world-leading nation in synchronized swimming. Thank you, Julie Johnston.
Sorry, I have my mic muted. Super. Thank you very much, Chris. That was well within the time limit as well. The next person on the list here is Rebecca Okuri. So I imagine that Jackie's just sending her an email right now. I saw her come on as a panelist. So, okay, we'll just wait a few minutes till she comes on.
Henry, I believe Rebecca's coming on by telephone, so you may not see her. So I'll just ask Rebecca, can you hear us? Not yet. I'll just give her a minute.
I saw her on previous as a panelist, but again, she may have chosen a different method for this.
She'll come back on. She left when everybody left, of course.
Thank you for your patience, everybody. I see Rebecca coming back on, so just give her a second for the mic and everything to come in, and she'll be on momentarily.
Hello.
Hey, Rebecca. Hi. How are you?
Oh my goodness, I'm great. You
Welcome
guys
back.
can see I'm not a, computer guru.
No, great. Now, Rebecca, what I forgot to mention is I have a timer, and as soon as you start your speech, you have 2 minutes and 30 seconds, and near the end of it, I will then cut you off. So I wish you good luck here. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Henry. Thank you, everybody. So I'm sorry I was fiddling with my things. You guys have been on this call for a long time, so let's really keep it point. I was asked by Henry and Jackie, and looking at all these documents, that basically they want me to tell you value added, coming onto your board. And as you read, I'm sure, the little text I sent you guys, all the provincial executive leadership, it's it's very understandable that when you're governing your own sport, you're always wondering, who are these outside people that would want to come and get involved with us. And I can tell you for a fact that my #1 passion in life is sport. It is Canadian sport. I know it like the back of my hand. I've been around it for over 25 years. And I started when I was 5, just so everybody's on the same page on that. And, I just feel that everything that I've done over the last few years and all the positions I've occupied has brought me to a certain level of experience. And also the way that I handle any types of issues are always with consensus building approach, with a very smart way to just simply first listen, analyze, and then make different suggestions and moves so we can move forward. So I think that basically when we have a small organization like Synchro Canada, it needs to be strong and solid. It needs to grow with what it has. It needs to optimize all of their strengths and all of your strengths. And so I feel that although definitely not an expert in synchronized swimming, but definitely an expert in the Canadian sporting system, I can bring a smart, creative, brain and intelligence to your community. I feel that experience in alignment as well as advancement of sport and doing things on small budgets, those are the key things that I can definitely bring to your table. So I will leave you with that, and you will make the decision in a few minutes. So, and if I don't get elected, feel free to call on me to help you out with different things.
Great. Well, Rebecca, thank you very much. Thank you for that information. So you are certainly free to continue on and stay on the meeting and wait for the results, or you can leave and we will contact you. But thanks for that.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Thank you, guys.
All right. And I guess the last person on our list is Gail McClellan. So Jack, if you can arrange to have her come back, that'd be great.
She should be on shortly. Thanks, Henry.
Hello.
Hello, is this Gail?
It is Gail.
Hi, are you on by phone?
I'm on by phone. Yes.
Okay, cool. I couldn't see you coming on. Thank you for rejoining. That's fantastic. So Gail, I forgot to mention I do have a timer, and so you have 2 minutes and 30 seconds, and roughly at that time I will cut you off as soon as you start speaking. So thank you very much for rejoining, and I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, thanks. Well, first of all, I really want to thank Synchro Canada and the nominating committee in particular for providing this opportunity to be considered for a position on the board. I apologize if there's some noise in the background. I'm on site at an event at the moment, and I'll try to be brief so I don't get the hook before I'm done. So to start off with, I know it's not easy to take a new approach when things have always been done in a certain way, but that being said, there is a saying that says, if you keep doing what you've always done, you'll get the same result. So I think taking a different approach, including adding expertise to fill or augment experience gaps or bring new skills to the board, is just one more tool for the organization on the path towards excellence. So you've had an opportunity, hopefully, to review my background on paper, and the question this afternoon is about adding value. So I've been really fortunate to have had the role of athlete, official, coach, and administrator spanning 3 different artistic sports, so gymnastics, figure skating, and freestyle skiing. And, I know from living it that there's a unique aspect to artistic sports, and the lessons learned that I've had from each of those, with each organization facing similar challenges to those Synchro Canada is facing as each of those sports was developing, I think is really an advantage. So getting Canadian athletes to the podium amidst the rise of previously unranked nations, creating a large grassroots from which to draw potential Olympians, and working in the context of a judging system are 3 areas of many in which I've had both personal and professional experience. Project management is another area where I can add value, with my project management designation effectively contributing to bringing the vision and strategic priorities to life and helping program or project delivery stay on track is a key, I think, to building successful programs. So achieving milestones, resources being used wisely, determining and mitigating risks, staying on track towards the established 2024 goals is something that I think I can help with. And project management is not an end to itself, but it does provide some excellent tools and processes that can be used across all areas and projects. So a couple other areas I'm just going to touch briefly where I think I can make a contribution. Sponsorship, communication, and fundraising. And I mention them in a secondary manner, not because they're not important, but I think the focus on those flows from and in tandem with the other established priorities. So in terms of strategic objectives, the leadership of the Synchro Canada board from a vision perspective and the staff from the execution side is important to aligning the organization from coast to coast to coast. So it really is a team effort all the way.
Thank you, Gail.
Okay.
That's a 2-minute story, but I appreciate it.
I was almost done. So.
That's great. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
So you're free to stay on. You're free to stay on, or
okay.
for the vote, or you can leave, and we'll tell you what the results are. But certainly feel free to stay on. So I guess that is the presentations of all 6 of our candidates. As you can see, absolutely, I'm thrilled. They're actually all excellent, first class, and I wish you good luck in terms of the voting. So I guess what the voting process is the next part. What Jackie just said was that Stefan was hoping to give a quick overview. So I see that the microphone is on, and I'll turn it over to Stefan.
Yes, thanks, Henry. Hi, everyone. Is there any way, I'm going to change the presenter so you can actually see my screen. We have a little presentation that was done. Okay, hold on.
Okay, I see you as a presenter. There you go.
Okay, so this is the presentation that was sent to everyone who was going to have to vote. So, I mean, I saw in the comments that Kathleen said that she had received an email, but basically it starts with all of you who were registered to vote should have gotten an email. I sent one yesterday around dinner time, and I resent the same email again this morning.
So, Stefan, can we just hang on for a second? So, Natalie, turning back to you, are you clear now in that email?
Yes, I am.
So you answered your question? Good, all right.
Okay, good. So basically the email will look like this. And you have the option of either clicking on the link that's on top and entering whatever data you were sent as far as your voter ID and your password. Or I believe if you click on that second link, it will take you right into the account without having to enter that information. And I don't know whether you had time to go through the process, but it's very, very simple. So this is the login screen you will get when you go. You only have to enter the information that you received in your email. And that will take you to the voting screen. And, there can be many different ballots, but for now, there's only one active election, or one active ballot, rather. So you will just see the one. So if you click on it, it won't be called test vote. It will be called Synchro Canada elections ballot number 1. And if you click on it, you will, this is actually just going back a little bit. If you had already voted, this is what you would have seen, this screen where it said, well, you already voted on it, and you're actually able to go in and see your voting receipt. But once you go in, it'll give you a short, quick little rundown on how it works. But in our case, we only have the one question, so it's very self-explanatory. You will get to a ballot screen that will look like this, except with the 6 names of the candidates that are on there. You have the option of clicking a maximum of 3. It won't let you click more than 3, so there shouldn't be any spoiled ballots. But I believe the rules say that you don't have to vote for 3, but that's
correct.
You won't be able to vote for more than 3. And once you're done, you click on continue. It'll give you a little ballot confirmation screen where you can just say confirm. And once you hit that, it's over. Your vote is in, and we will see it on our end. And basically, the process that I have set up here is that right now I'm presenting this to you, but I also have on another computer a GoToMeeting setup with the scrutineers, and I see that Jen and Shelby have already logged on, and I'm sharing the screen of the actual admin side of the election manager, so they'll be able to see everything I see as the votes come in, and then they'll do their thing once the votes are in. So
hello. Yeah, I don't do the test vote, but I don't have an email from you either yesterday or today.
Okay. And I'm sorry, who is this?
This is Pam Kidney.
Yeah.
Oh, Pam. Okay. Well, I mean, I can actually try and send another. It was sent to synchro@sportnovascotia.ca.
That's right. I don't have it.
Okay. So
Pam, it's Jackie. Sorry, can you just check your junk mail? Have you done that already? Because
no, I haven't, but I will.
Okay, thank you. It should be there.
And then a question right now is also, does anybody else, if anybody else doesn't have that email, please let us know right now, and then we'll get that sorted out. I'm assuming everybody else does. Otherwise, please send us a note or a question or unmute your mic and tell us.
Yeah, I do have it in the junk mail.
Okay.
Kathleen? Looks like Kathleen's online.
This is Natalie, and I don't have the option of voting either.
Okay. Yeah, it's normal that you wouldn't have the option because the election hasn't started yet. So once I click on start, maybe you'll just do a refresh or click the link again, and then you'll be able to vote.
That was Natalie, I think, saying that. Okay. Kathleen,
So
do you have a question?
Did you see me sign on as well then, Stefan? It's Kathleen.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you've signed on already, I don't think it matters. Like, I'm going to start the election, and maybe you just do a refresh once I tell you that it's started.
Okay.
And that should work.
Okay.
So if no one has any additional questions, I'm gonna actually I'll stay on the call to make sure it's okay. But I'm gonna start the election. If it's okay with.
Sure. I think that's fine, Stefan. So you can open up the election to vote. So I guess just to conclude, I guess the election is now open, and I encourage you all to vote. And I guess as soon as we know the results, I will get a phone call from Shelby. Thanks, Stefan.
Thank you.
If there are any further questions, feel free to ask them. And Kathleen, your mic is still on, just so you know. Which is fine.
I've clicked on it and nothing's happening.
Natalie's asked the question, is this it or do we have other things to cover? Natalie, this is potentially it. We may have to go through a second or third round of ballots. We're prepared for that. But typically we've done it in one ballot, and that's about it after that.
Henry, I've clicked on these links and they're taking me nowhere. And it worked perfectly when I did the test vote, so I don't know what's wrong.
Okay, Stefan, you're probably still on. Yeah, here's Stefan.
Hi. Yes, hi, sorry. Yeah, so I'm not sure what to tell you. What do you say? What do you mean when you say it's taking you nowhere, Pam?
To vote, please visit, and I click on it and nothing happens.
Okay. Are you able to actually copy and paste the link? Like if you take that link.
I tried that and it didn't work.
Okay. So I'm not sure. Maybe I should just run it by the scrutineers, or Henry, are you the election president? Like, I mean, I maybe we should just have Pam call it in, just to the head scrutineer or something. I don't know. Like I'm.
I think she could have sent an email or something if she's comfortable with that. Cause I don't know. Yeah.
Okay, the scrutineers are actually hearing me talk in this call right now, so they all said that they're comfortable with, receiving an email or a call.
Okay, so who am I emailing?
Well, then, hold on. What I'm going to do, Pam, is I'm going to send you an email right now with with the 3 emails that you should send it to.
So you plus the CC to you, Stefan, plus the CC to 3 scrutineers.
Okay, so Pam, I sent you an email and CC'd are the 3 scrutineers. So if you do reply all.
Yeah, I don't have it yet, but.
No, I'll get it in a sec.
Ding. Oh, that's it. Is everybody else okay? Any other glitches?
Everybody else has voted, Henry.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll do it on this one.
I shall await the phone call then. All right, I just muted the sound, the slideshow. I love that slideshow. I could watch it all day. But the results of the election are in, and I don't think you want to wait much longer. So just to give you the results, we do have clear winners, clear majority of votes. And the new directors for next year are Julie Johnson with 8 votes, Judy Ensburdett with 7 votes, and Lindsay Duncan with 7 votes. And those will be your new directors. So a round of applause. Yay! Congratulations, everybody. And that is basically the election. So I will turn the floor back, I guess, to the regular election, regular annual meeting. And at this point, I want to congratulate those elected. I know you'll serve the organization well and honor the athletes and other stakeholders very well. So with that, I guess I would request a motion now that the digital ballots be destroyed. That we destroy. Oh. Thanks, Jill.
Natalie.
Jill and Natalie, we're going to destroy. We're going to destroy Stefan's computer. All right, thank you. Any discussions or other objections to that motion or abstentions? So this is a vote on this motion. Anybody opposed or abstentions to destroying the ballots? Fantastic. Thanks, Stefan. Thanks for your help.
Oh, my pleasure, Henry. I'm still on with the scrutineer, so we're going to take care of that right now.
Yeah, take care of that, and you will. And the scrutineers will be contacting the 6 candidates and let them know the results. That's fantastic. Other business. I don't know if we didn't actually on the agenda list any other business. There was nothing brought forward at the beginning of the agenda. I just did want to open up for a few seconds if there was anything burning that somebody wanted to raise. I don't see any questions. I don't see any open mics. And I think so that's good. There's no other business. So that's it, I guess. So I guess with that, I guess, again, thank you very much for your attendance. The meeting went a little longer than expected, but I think it's hopefully it met your expectations in terms of content and efficiency. And with that, I guess I would request a motion to adjourn the meeting.
I'll move that. Kelly.
Thanks, Helen, and thank you very much, everybody. Goodbye, and have a good afternoon.
Henry, I want to verbally thank you for everything you've done for Synchro Canada. It's Kathleen here. I think you did a wonderful job having taken over the presidency rather unexpectedly. I'll put it that way. And I'd say that I commend you for a job well done considering all of that. And it's obvious over the time that you've been here that your love for the sport is phenomenal. It's contagious, and I thank you for everything you've done.
It's been a great group.
You're here.
Thank you very much, guys, and it's been a great group of stakeholders. You guys have made it really fun and easy. So thank you all very much for that. All right, goodbye, everybody, and see you.
Have a great weekend, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone. Goodbye now.
Bye.